Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And BlueDragonFive.
And welcome to the show where we wax poetic about the movies we see on a month-to-month basis. It's time to crack open our
Movie
movie
Memoirs!
memoirs. Yes. Oh boy, Dragon, August 2019. This is a month that you and I really kind of dreaded going into the end of July. And I gotta say, I think on both our ends, we were maybe a little pleasantly surprised. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a knockout. It wasn't the best month of the year or anything, but I think I think it bore a lot more fruit than I was expecting it to.
Yeah, I was expecting quite the dry spell, basically the dry spell that September is looking to be, but again,
Yeah,
having...
I took a look into that. I was like, Dragon and I had this conversation the last time we spoke, and I was like, oh, don't worry. The first week of September is it. And then I looked and I was like, oh, that's literally pun very much intended here. It. It is it, Dragon. That title it's the most literal title in the world, Dragon. It's all that I'm looking forward to. Oh god. So and that comes out Thursday. So we've got a long month ahead of us, man.
Yep.
All right. Anyways, we'll get to that in at the end of this podcast in a couple hours. But regardless, without further ado, Dragon, I guess let me. Sorry about this. Wow, smooth transition, Tiki. No, ignore that. Ignore that. Where is it? I guess I don't have the news. Okay, I'm sorry.
No,
Wow,
Tiki, yeah, well, oh yeah, it's strange, because it was...
it was
was
there. Yeah.
Ah. Well, I guess overall, just the kind of my thesis, just in one sentence, is that August, as we kind of summarize here, August was solid with a lot of surprises and a standout for me, which we'll get to. And in regards to my catch up, it was let's say diverse and rewarding, very very diverse and rewarding catch up.
Fair enough. All right, news, Dragon. What do we got?
All right, news. Let's just
The
go down.
news.
Huey knew.
I
Huey.
was really, I was really tempted to just type up "duh news."
I know. Huey Lewis needs time to create, but you know what? We can't wait anymore. We got to talk about the news.
Oh God!
So,
All right.
so for starters, we should talk about, of course, folks. Just to note it here, we've already kind of talked out the D23 and kind of all the interconnected stuff within D23, like your Star Wars news, your Disney Plus Marvel news, some of the Marvel movie news. We kind of covered all that, so we're going to try not to dip into that well, but what we will talk about is something that's kind of looming in amidst D23. The big hoopla with Spider-Man that hit in August, like a lead balloon.
Yeah, this is one of those situations, Dragon, where I have faith that the studios are going to work it out eventually. But, and I'm saying this as a lifelong fan of Disney, I think Disney is honestly like maybe 90% to blame for this situation. I think people going after Sony are just really unfair and reactionary.
Yeah, here's the thing. So basically, here's what we know. We know essentially what happened is a really bad renegotiation has gone down. Uh, Presumably, in lieu of the success of Spider-Man: Far From Home, as well as kind of the critical success of Spider-Verse. And again, now we're getting to
And the
part of
financial success of Venom.
that as well, and basically kind of the success of Spider-Man is kind of the brand overall, and of course there's a little bit of speculation as maybe with the fact that hey, when they announced all the Phase 4 movies at Comic-Con, a third Spider-Man movie remained mysteriously absent. So again, that's reading into things, mind you, but no one's 100% on either side of the fence as to who's truly at fault here, like who got greedy or who's like kind of or who is quite to blame here. Basically, it's Because basically what we knew about the deal, and I kind of looked into this a little bit, so essentially the deal specifically was, the way it kind of existed was Disney got 5% of the gross for the movie, as well as all the merchandising, where Sony, they got final say, as well as all the rest of the proceeds of the movies. That's kind of where the deal broke down, as far as we publicly knew. Because unfortunately, everyone's always chasing their tails, like, how the heck does this Spider-Man timeshare work? And can't we see the document? No, you can't see the paperwork. Well, why? It doesn't work. I don't know what to tell you. So, essentially, from what I understand, Tiki, if you've heard anything majorly different, by all means, correct me. This is from what I'm kind of going from Bernardin on here. I know Mark Bernard does do like a super in-depth view on the news here, but I trust him. I trust him as the word on the street. So the point being, the idea with the renegotiation was that in lieu of all the success, I believe, again, we're not sure who proposed the renegotiation. The idea is there was going to be someone proposed that they co-produce the movies, as in go half and half, go halfsies essentially, on producing it, and of course would factor into the merchandising and everything. And this is where trouble started, and basically,
and just to make a quick amendment on that, it would also technically give Disney the rights to the character if they own more than 50% of him.
Interesting.
That was a big sticking point. That
makes sense, and this is where it gets muddy, folks. We just don't know. Like, again, I thought in such simplistic terms of how that deal
basically
broke down.
Dragon, essentially, from what I understood, Disney was essentially trying to buy Spider-Man without legally buying Spider-Man, if that makes any sense.
That is awfully shrewd. I gotta give him that. It's awfully shrewd. That's what
I'm saying.
That's because I always thought. Look, I will be fully admit I'm kind of a lamb to slaughter in terms of the public eye of Spider-Man here. In terms of I've always been on the mindset. I think we all have, especially like when a movie like Venom comes out. We're like, Sony, there's allergic to success many a time. Where it's like just let Marvel do all the creative work for you. And I find out now with all the deals and everything, kind of these these little facts kind of being illuminated and stuff, and kind of the hearsay of it all. It's like, well, maybe Sony was more integral to the success than we'd like to give it credit for because they had such a bad track record, with some of the stuff before. Maybe it was a little maybe it was a little undue, but then again, Sony still makes terrible trailers. So again, that's where kind of all the little reminders come from.
I mean, they might have a bad track record in the past with the Amazing movies, but like when it comes to Spider-Man movies, just across the board, there's been more hits than misses in Sony's department.
Which is true, and that's the thing. It's like my instinct when this Spider-Man news was kind of, you had the horrifying headline of like Spider-Man reverting to Sony and like the deal breaking down. Like, oh no, my instinct is to blame Sony because again, my assumption is that Marvel's doing all the legwork and Sony finally allowed them to you kind of share in the success of Spider-Man. Like, we can use Spider-Man, we can integrate him into the greater fabric of the MCU. And at the end of the day, Tiki, you know what it boils down for? Here's what I need to hear before I can decide who's at fault here, before I can make a better judgment call. I need to know who specifically shoots the movie. What I really want to know, because I hear that Sony shoots the movies, but I don't know, because I always heard creatively Marvel was highly involved in the legwork of what we were doing with the MC with Spider-Man, which makes sense with something like Civil War. And the question is, like, where do we go from Homecoming and Far From Home? That's what I need to know. Like, who did the legwork on that? Was that mostly Sony? And that's where I'm at on it. So, regardless, it's a muddy thing, and I think at this point we should. I think we're all hoping this kind of gets. It's going to be like a headline saying, "Hey, never mind, it's all going back. We've reached an arrangement. Spider-Man, everything's hunky dory with Spider-Man."
Honestly, I'm just at this point. Maybe call me an optimist, Dragon, but I'm kind of just waiting for that to happen at this point.
Yeah, let's say, like, best case scenario, let's say they put Lord and Miller in charge of Spider-Man. That's a pretty good trade-off.
Oh my God! Put Lord and Miller in charge of a rebooted Spider-Man. I'm down for that. Honestly,
that's what I'm saying. I mean, what I expect to happen, personally, I expect Disney's money to win out at the end of the day. I expect them to either, by some way, shape, or form. I don't know how. I don't know if it's going to be more shrewd business tactics, or if they're going to just end up buying just a portion of Sony that is the Spider-Man portion, or again, I think the smartest thing they should do if they were to buy any portion of Spider-Man, just
they could just buy Sony outright.
Well,
that would dip their hands in the video game department as well.
$10 billion in a year, and it's not.
Super Nintendo World is a big competitor to Disney.
They could have
PlayStation Land, Dragon. A
Fair
Crash
point.
Bandicoot ride.
Very fair. But what I'm saying, I think, I guess at the end of the day is if they could be very, I think the best case scenario is that if they be very specific with their wording, that we're going to buy the live action movie rights to Spider-Man. We're going to take the live action rights to Spider-Man and basically leave the animation at
There's
Sony's
no way
camp.
Sony's ever gonna sell that. There's no way.
I know that's why I'm saying
It's
optimistic.
Sony's bread and butter. They're not gonna give it to Disney outright.
That is fair. That's why I'm saying it might be a bloodbath for all we know. If in terms of, because again, of course, here's the big sticking point. It's not just we can't necessarily just let it lie because again, Far From Home, without giving anything away, it really hinges.
Right.
Even without getting into that, just getting into like a post Endgame world, Spider-Man is very important in a post Endgame world, and especially after that movie, it's like you really put all the chips on Spider-Man. Now Spider-Man's been taken away from us, and I don't think Disney's going to take that standing personally.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
I don't know. I think Feige's taking like a champ, saying we kind of had Spider. We knew Spider-Man was like a fleeting thing we were lucky to have, which I think is kind of a nice way of putting it. And I still wish though, if they're going to do that, at least give them one more movie, then allow that to go through. Okay, like give them the closure because we kind of have like a big hanging Chad with Spider-Man now. It's just. Oh boy, I mean, but if Sony just at the very least, what I'm hoping for, if Sony just goes on making movies with the way things are now, and just like Sony will be basically making the movies on their own, I hope that the MCU events maintain. Because a lot of people are hoping that Tom Holland remains in the role, and I too would hope for that. And if so, basically again, I think we're all just kind of sympathetic on that. A reboot would be like, yet again, we're doing another reboot, short of a Lord and Miller save. Another reboot with Spider-Man could be up. Here we go again. We'll see what happens. But the thing people have been wanting with Spider-Man is like a Spider-Man who's not connected to like another Marvel hero appearing in the movie, which some people believed was the arrangement. That was a little quid pro quo. It's like, okay, if we're gonna have Spider-Man in the MCU, another Marvel character must appear in the movie. We get Nick Fury in Far From Home. That's why you get Iron Man in Homecoming. It's kind of like a little quid pro quo, a little loophole within the thing. Yeah, that has to happen. But now, if Sony were to make that and hopefully keep that story going, it's gonna be a real shame if we have Tom Holland continue as Spider-Man, and then we say, "Hey, remember that big cliffhanger at the end of Far From Home? Didn't happen."
Oh God.
That's what I'm saying. That's gonna be a real bummer if that happens. If yay, we keep Tom Holland, but we lost all that great progress in the big what the. Just like the Aunt May thing at the end of Homecoming, it's like we've lost it yet again. It's all that, and it's gone.
Yep.
So we'll see how it plays out. I'm pulling for Spider-Man to win out at the end of the day, but I don't know. Mommy and Daddy are fighting, and the divorce is nasty.
All right, what's up next?
All right, next. Let's see. Next, we are. Yes, let's talk about some breaking news. Something that happened today. Some kind of more somber note here. Kevin Hart. He was in a car accident today. I don't know if you know this.
I saw the headline on IMDb. I didn't look into it too much. I don't know how serious it is.
Well, here's as much as I know. And bear in mind, it's breaking news. We don't know all the little details yet. It's the fact that Kevin Hart, he got in a car accident recently, today even, and he's suffering a very severe back injury.
Ooh.
Now I don't know where necessarily the damage is. They're making it sound really not good.
Really? Oh my God.
I'm just fingers crossed, knock on wood. I'm hoping it's not like a paralysis deal. I'm saying he's suffering a back injury, and the other driver is also injured. But they haven't revealed what Kevin Hart's kind of current status is. But I'm pulling for him.
Yeah. Wow, that's intense. I didn't realize it was that bad.
I don't want to say, I don't want to cry wolf on this. I don't want to say like, oh yeah, we're maybe it's just an average ordinary car accident. They're blown out of proportion. Like for all I know, TMZ could have been the first to report this. I don't know, but I'm hoping for his safety. I'm hoping that it's kind of like I'm hoping it's maybe blown out of proportion. I'm hoping he's going to be okay.
It'd be crushing if the year after the Oscar situation, he did, God forbid, something really bad happened. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, that'd be terrible.
So,
our hearts are with him.
For him.
Our hearts are with him. No pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, let's move on from there. Okay, so speaking again, let's kind of get all the somber stuff out of the way here. So again, we let's get to some passings. We lost 2 people this month. Thankfully, it was only 2, but because some of these months, my friend, you're gonna see a lot of deaths of some really great, remarkable people. And this month we only had two, but still two really worthy lives here, I tell you.
I don't know why you keep saying only, man. It's like, yeah, it's still bad news anytime anyone.
It is bad news. I'm just saying, I mean, Tiki, you don't understand. Like, we're just losing so many people these days. I mean, we're just, oh god, it's horrifying. It really is.
No, you're right. You're right. Anyways,
All right, so we lost it. Do you tell them who we lost?
We lost Peter Fonda, and then we also lost Valerie Harper of the Mary Tyler Moore Show fame.
And so Peter Fonda, of course, the original Captain America, if you will.
I'm a bad movie fan, Dragon. I don't think I've ever seen a single Peter Fonda movie.
Oh, I know you have. Well, you've seen movies that have Peter Fonda in it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's a difference between movies that have Peter Fonda in it and Peter Fonda movies. Like, I haven't seen the big ones. I haven't seen Midnight Cowboy. Like, so generally speaking, Peter Fonda I know is more just a name and an image and a face, more than I know, like, the actual talent behind the name.
Yeah, I mean, Fonda, basically, one of the biggest things Fonda ever did, I think I would argue the thing that made his career. I know he's done other things. Of course, he comes from a pedigree, if you
I'm
will.
sorry, Easy Rider, not Midnight Cowboy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, when you said that, I was thinking, wait, did I miss something in Midnight Cowboy?
No. I'm sorry. I always get the two confused. I'm sorry.
Anyway, but yeah, that's the thing. So, of course, he comes from a pedigree where his father was, I believe, Henry Fonda, his sister was Jane Fonda, and his daughter is Bridget Fonda. So, of course, a lot of famous Fondas in that family. Actually, it's by sheer coincidence, Henry Fonda factors into one of the things we're going to be talking about later with my catch-up stuff. Just kind of hit me out of left field here. Of course, one of the nickname you can give Peter Fonda is the original Captain America because he was like one of those, many a time in other media, if you will, like you'll have like, if you ever scroll down, you look at something up about a character, it's like, hey, other references to Captain America. One of the very original references to Captain America was in Easy Rider, where his nickname was, you gotta remember, I believe Captain America had the 70s show going on, where he remember the crappy 70s show where he rode the motorcycle. You remember that at all?
Oh, God, yeah, vaguely.
And essentially, I believe that's where they got the idea from an Easy Rider. I believe Easy Rider is like in 86 or something. The point is late 80s, so they kind of got that from the 70s show. And I kind of just like a little name drop of Captain America. I don't want to say he was a nickname, but Peter Fonda, he had great presence, he had great laid back.
He was an idea.
Sure.
I really shouldn't be joking.
A man is dead, and you're okay. But speaking of us, again, going from the Easy Rider, something you and I both know him from, Ghost Rider. He had a really great role in Ghost Rider. He was Mephisto in Ghost Rider, basically a huge pivotal element of the Ghost Rider mythology. He's the devil that kind of turns Johnny Rider into the Ghost Rider. And again, if you're going to cast a guy in that role and you're not going to go big and grandiose with the visual, like he's the Red Devil and everything, you got to have an actor that brings gravitas. And I think he brought that. That's the thing, T. I know some of these great actors from the crappiest of movies. Nothing against Ghost Rider. I'm saying for some of the other stuff about to bring up here.
Yeah, I would say something against Ghost Rider.
I'm saying like mostly again, like half. I don't want to be too harsh on Ghost Rider, but yeah, it's not great. That's what I'm saying. I don't want to be super harsh.
The most mediocre of movies.
There you go. That's more accurate.
Which to me is even more offensive than the worst of movies, as you know.
The thing is, with Fonda, you have of course he has a really good role in Ghost Rider. I would argue. Say what you will about that movie, he's really solid in that movie. Then you have something like Wild Hogs, where he has like a really fun cameo in Wild Hogs, which just really does not hold one iota up to scrutiny. By the way, if you ever rewatch Wild Hogs.
I imagine it doesn't because it didn't hold up to scrutiny when I saw it the first time. So yeah, I imagine like 10 plus years after the fact. Yeah,
yep, it gets worse.
I really imagine it doesn't hold up well.
But of course, bikers kind of factor into that movie in a great deal. Peter Fonda is kind of the big reveal of the bikers. So it's like, hey, Peter Fonda's in this, and he's kind of like the respected king of the bikers, awesomely. So that's neat. And believe it or not, the thing I kind of hold him, the thing I most nostalgically know him for, and I kind of hold the most reverence for him with, is kind of you're gonna laugh. I know you will. It's Thomas and the Magic Railroad.
Yeah, hey, fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, that's yeah.
Not the best movie.
Sparkle, man.
Not the best movie. You know what? a lot of people are harsh on the live action portrayals in that film. I feel Peter Fonda and Alec Baldwin, they brought some of that movie. I know a lot of people say,
No,
"Oh,
they
you're."
definitely did drag it. I mean, everyone kind of likes to joke about, like, to me, it's almost like they were too good for that movie, but that doesn't mean they had bad performances.
I mean, I really loved Alec. When I was a kid, I loved Alec Baldwin in that movie. I did because I mean, there were stakes in there. Again, I will always cite to me the best scene, the most remembered scene for me in that film is when Alec Baldwin is cutting the lines and he's basically being dangled precariously off the ravine. It's like, oh my god, such a great intense scene for a kid, you know.
Mm.
But again, Peter Fonda, of course, just kind of being the heart of like the big mystery of that movie with the mystery engine of it all. There, of course, every you need a mystery engine for a movie like that. The Magic Railroad, you have to have stakes. Anywho, so yes, let's also he was on the blacklist. Kind of shout that out a little bit there. There's one legitimately really great thing that he took part in. We've got to mention. Tiki, have you ever seen the movie made from the Laramie Project? The play of the Laramie Project.
Can't say I did. Can't say I
HBO
have.
did see Laramie Project. You know what it is, though, right? I mean, the Laramie Project at all, or
Yeah, it sounds like vaguely familiar. I don't really know what it is, if I'm being honest.
about Matthew Shepard. Basically, it's based on it's a play that's based on a true story, and they did a TV movie of it on HBO, and it's really good. And Peter Fonda plays the doctor. Basically, a kid is beaten for being gay in kind of a southern small town. It's a tragedy, and he's essentially in a coma, let's say. And Peter Fonda is the doctor who's kind of dealing with the press and everything. He wants to know what this hate crime that went on and everything. So he has a really solid performance. That he's really good at it.
Okay, cool.
Anyways, yeah, let's talk about Valerie Harper. So Valerie Harper, of course, best known for Rhoda from Mary Tyler Moore. You saw a little bit of Mary Tyler Moore. What do you think?
Yeah. I only know her from the from what she's popped up in the few Christmas specials we've reviewed, but she's definitely definitely kind of like the Ethel to Mary Tyler Moore's Lucy in that show.
Yeah, she was always. I liked her far more than Cloris Leachman in that show, personally. I mean, nothing against Cloris. Here's the thing: I love Cloris Leachman, just not in Mary Tyler Moore for some reason. I don't know what to tell you. I love her another. Again, she's wonderful in Young Frankenstein, but I can't stand her in Mary Tyler Moore. That's just me. Regardless, but yeah, Rhoda was always. She was just she was the fun friend and the fun neighbor. It's like she just kind of brought basically in. This is gonna sound like I hope this doesn't come across as offensive, but she was kind of the marvelous Mrs. Maisel of her era, and it was always really cool. She just had something like kind of the way everybody loves Rachel Brosnahan now. I think it kind of like Rhoda kind of had that. Valerie Harper kind of brought that out in that character enough to get a spin-off, which is kind of. Again, it's kind of the age of the spin-off, the cinematic universes of comedies.
It was, yeah.
There were so like Norman Lear had so many cinematic spin-offs, kind of TV cinematic universes, silver screen spin-offs, if you will. The thing I really want to note with Valerie Harper, real quick though, is that she was diagnosed with cancer many years ago, and that's the thing. She was given only a few months to live, and my God, she held on, man. She held on for many years. She was a fighter till the end. She was my goodness. I'd say what I commend her for. She she had a will about her, man.
Kind of weirdly mirrors a subject we're going to be getting into in just a minute here.
Oh yes. All right. Okay, let's move on from some sad stuff here. Let's talk about some again. So let's
Flash.
Saves the universe. Maybe. So here's what's happening, folks. So Fox reportedly they were basically
Fox.
So basically, the Fox now that now they're owned by Disney, at least a large portion of Fox. Well, yeah, basically Fox is bought up by Disney. I don't want to split hairs, but the point is Fox is now owned by. I don't know what I was thinking there. Forgive me. So essentially, there were some projects in the works that were announced. I believe just last month. If I'm pretty sure, like in July, they were announced. Like 2 months ago now. At this point, basically, in July we announced some projects. They're really cool sounding projects, and now they're in jeopardy because Disney might have to kind of lay off some, basically not develop any of the Fox projects. So I don't know if they're going to go to other places or if it's the fact that they're kind of owned. Many a time when a project is kind of put forward by a studio, they're going to hang on to that script where you won't be able to shop it around. So it's unclear what the fates of these movies are going to be, assuming Disney does not continue to go forward with them. So again, they're not officially canceled, but they're not officially still going either. So again, they're still kind of announced, but now there's a little bit of there's a storm cloud over them, if you will, you know.
Mhm.
So of course we talked about the Taika Waititi Flash Gordon last July, I believe.
Yeah, and that honestly, I don't really. I don't want to say I don't care about it, but just Taika Waititi is like, I feel like he's quickly turning into the next Guillermo del Toro, and I don't mean that in a bad way. But I mean, obviously, I don't mean in a bad way in terms of talent, but I mean that in just kind of like, you know how Guillermo del Toro tends to like take on a lot of projects at the same time. I feel like Waititi's kind of like, he's kind of getting there. You know what I mean?
True, but so far he's been able to fulfill everything that he's been taking part in. Basically, he's just appearing in things, but so far he's been able to manage. This is the only other
He
project that
has. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. His schedule is getting full, and I feel like he's booking himself like to the point where he could become a Del Toro in the future.
it's a fair point. I want to say, I mean, you know Watiti's films better than I. He's never done an animated film before, has he?
No, 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 no. He's only done What We Do in the Shadows, Hunt for the Wilder People, and then upcoming, Jojo Rabbit.
That's what I'm
Those are his only
saying.
three besides Ragnarok.
Like, tell me you wouldn't want to see his work in animation, though.
I would for sure. I'm just saying. I'm just saying if it's something like I, I don't know, man. Like, his live action films have such a unique flair to them. You haven't seen any of his stuff outside of Ragnarok?
I have not, no.
You really need to look into that, man, because I feel like you'd really enjoy his stuff. I mean, they have such a voice to it. Like, Ragnarok is not the only reason he's one of the most sought after names in Hollywood. I'll say that much.
Well, again, I might, especially when the time Jojo Rabbit comes out, I may definitely look into some of his works. So, we'll.
What We Do in the Shadows might be I know we already kind of technically cemented our choices for Haunted Holiday Hijinks, but What We Do in the Shadows might be one we might want to make an amendment to with that, because that's a damn good one. Anyways.
Anyway. Okay, the thing we really got to talk about. Oh, boy. So, there was another.
I literally had to, like, stop the presses and send you an email, like, wait, what?
I personally didn't tell you what this was about, so I can kind of tell you about it.
Okay, please tell me.
Okay, so
because Dragon, I will say I have a ton of nostalgia for the subject matter, man. Like, I was obsessed with this every year it came around.
oh yeah, you're gonna love this. Okay, so
all right, lay it
okay,
on
so
me.
I forget if it was July, but apparently there was a project that was in the works that, again, right now we're unclear of the status of it. But here's the thing: so there was a biopic that was in the works by Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck was I believe Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, from what I heard. So you're gonna love the creative team on this. I love the creative team on this. So you have Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, and here's the words I just go nuts for: Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, the Deadpool writers.
Nice.
They were slated to do a biopic on the McDonald's monopoly scandal. Now, this was about, I don't know if you fully recall this. I believe you might. So essentially, of course, one of the things I do have various degrees of nostalgia for is the monopoly thing they do practically every year with McDonald's. They basically peel.
Oh man, you don't even know, dude. I have that was like one of the big bonding things between my grandma and I when I was a kid. Was like getting those boards and the pieces and taping them to the boards. I don't even know if they still have it. I assume it's just all done on the app now.
Now I can vouch because I was there with it, like putting the game pieces on the board and then collecting my father and my boys. Like I'm with all hands on deck. We're all very much. We're all very much into the McDonald's monopoly thing. Plus, you always had little freebies, like a little free, like an extra small fry.
Oh yeah. That was a nice perk as well, for sure.
That's what I'm saying. So, but now, basically
a small McFlurry.
Yeah, so basically,
troubles.
Exactly. And now, basically, what you do is you enter them in digitally, you scan them in, or with your phone or something. The point is you do
That's
something.
That's what I assumed. Yeah.
I forget exactly how it's been. Of course, it was like a few months back. It can't
probably either gives you the option to scan it or enter a confirmation number. I'm guessing.
I believe that was it. Yeah. Anyways, the point being that there was that, but of course, back during like the stick 'em on the board days, that whole thing. Back during that, there was famously there was a police. I believe there was a police officer. There was a cop who tried to cheat the Monopoly game.
Oh no!
And essentially, that's what that's the big scandal. Where
did he try and photocopy pieces, or
I personally haven't looked into it because I kind of want to see how the movie tackles it. And also, even if here's the question, which is going to come first, because also what has been commissioned, this will not be affected. I don't think this will be affected by the Fox thing of it all. There's also, coincidentally, there's a docu-series in the works as well. So,
oh man,
I don't believe they've officially
again, Dragon, kind of mirroring a certain documentary we're going to talk about.
So I forget the working title for the biopic is basically it's like a mixture of McDonald's and Monopoly. So it's Mcopoly, I believe.
Mcopoly.
I think that's the working title. I don't know. I can't quite find the official working title. I saw that one place.
McNopoly.
Exactly, it might be McNopoly. Point being, so point being that's the biopic, but they're doing they are on HBO, I believe. They're doing a 6-part docu-series called McMillions.
Okay.
So I believe they're going to, at the very least, I know they're going to cover the scan. I don't know if they're just going to cover the whole gambit of like, they're probably going to cover the creation of the thing and then that, and then how they've kind of, and then probably the scandal takes hold at probably halfway through would be my guess. Point being, I'm very interested in all these projects. I am. They have my attention. Of course, some other stuff that we've done, like, The Founder, of course. We definitely have vested interest in biopics on McDonald's. So
no, Dragon, I can't imagine that Monopoly dates back long enough to where Ray Kroc could have a cameo in this movie.
Probably not, no. I want to say, like, it was the mid-2000s, the Monopoly.
Maybe, what we could do is maybe we could have, like, Michael Keaton as Ray Kroc in a picture, like a framed picture or something in an office somewhere.
I kid you not, Tiki. If I have my numbers right, just kind of offhand here, I would imagine that Ray Kroc died in 2002, and I want to say Monopoly started either 2003 or 5. Would be my guess.
Well, you know what? We can have him like on his deathbed approving the concept.
Regardless, I mean these sound like
really another franchise.
Regardless, it sounds like we're simpatico with that. It would be great to see these projects happen, but again, like,
very least, yeah, dude. Oh my god! As soon as I heard about this, I was like, oh my god, that sounds right up my alley.
At the very least, we're getting McMillions, which will be something about the project. So at least we'll get that. But again, biopic though, written by the Deadpool writers and directed by Affleck, and Affleck's a really solid.
Affleck.
Yeah, not the duck. Yes,
Affleck.
It's a duck with a director's horn. Not that guy. Anywho, so let's see. Let's move on from that to basically the rest of these should go by pretty rapid fire. Okay, so we have Flash news. So Andy,
I think the news is basically that it just still exists.
Well, that's a bigger thing. How do you pronounce this guy's name, Tig? Andy.
Don't ask me, dude. I don't know.
Okay, if I'm going to take a shot in the dark here. I mean, I figure because you're the big.
Because I've seen his movie doesn't mean I know how to pronounce his name.
Well, that's just anyway. Okay, Andy Muschietti. Crap, I don't know.
Andy Muschietti, I think.
Muschietti, thank you.
I think that's it, yeah.
Okay, forgive me, Mr. Muschietti. Point is, Andy here, he's directing the Flash movie, and of course, as Tig said, a confirmation that, hey, the Flash movie apparently isn't dead, which Ezra Miller's been saying very positively, hey, we're still doing a Flash movie. Presumably, here's what we're working with here. Presumably, Ezra Miller is still involved, given the fact there's still a Flash movie in the works, and we now have a director who, I want to make it clear, as far as the director is concerned, the movie is happening. It is his next project, and it is happening. Whether that maintains itself, well, we'll have to see how Joker performs.
Yeah, we'll see.
But I tell you, I'm not a huge It fan, but those movies, the first one that I have seen, really visual directing style, and I feel that's a solid choice for Flash, and fits into the pattern that we have going on recently. Of all these hard
I don't know any of this stuff beyond It. I'm not sure how many movies he's made outside of It. But, I mean, like you said, just very visually striking director to be sure. And he also knows how to get really over-the-top performances out of people. I don't know how much that lands to the Flash, but, I could see him directing like a really fun Gorilla Grodd or something like that, in the style of Pennywise. I don't know.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying here. So, one, again, we just keep having all these horror directors doing really good work. Honestly, all the horror directors have been doing really good work on the DC.
That's because horror is like one of the most legitimate genres still left in the Hollywood system, Dragon.
And of course, I can even speak to the slasher genre. Have had some of the most creative filmmakers you'll ever find. Where these are guys that have to think on their feet with a low budget and have to really come with some really spectacular effects. In terms of the slasher movie director. I guess I'm just kind of all those documentaries. Again, I can't watch horror movie, but I sure love
the 4-hour Nightmare on Elm Street and
Camp Crystal Lake, the Camp Crystal Lake Memories documentary, basically the Jason version.
Yeah.
Both really excellent, by the way, and I highly recommend them. It's a long sit, man. I don't mean it's like, hey, it's like a 3 hour movie. I mean, it's a long sit. I mean, Camp Crystal Lake is almost twice as long as the Freddy Krueger thing. It's Never Sleep Again. It's like roughly 7 hours. Anywho, regardless, point being, appreciation for kind of the making. It goes into the horror movies more than seeing the horror movies themselves. But regardless, but yeah, that's the thing. So they've been doing a lot of tremendous work lately because you have James Wan on Aquaman. I believe the Annabelle creation director did Shazam, or at least one of the Annabelle directors did Shazam. And honestly, that's the thing. I think. Basically, I think, you know what I want to see? I want to see the most horrifying Flash villain you could do. We set up Ezra Miller. It's just like, okay, here's the happy-go-lucky Flash. This is a guy who hasn't been really in a fight yet. He hasn't really gone up. For all we know, he hasn't gone up against a Gorilla Grodd yet. And again, Gorilla Grodd could be a place to go. And I know we've gone here on TV,
of course,
but
I'm sorry, really quick. Scott Derrickson is also in that camp of horror directors.
Well, he's really going to prove his merit with the next Doctor Strange movie, too.
Yep.
But yeah, what I mean is, like, I would love to see Reverse Flash, personally.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The most terrifying Flash villain you could do would probably be Reverse Flash, in my opinion. That's the one. Gorilla Grodd, sure, we kind of seen that done really well in the TV show. You could always do Reverse Flash in a twisted way, and I'm sure this director would be really good with that. All right. Let's see. Krypton got canceled, unfortunately.
Womp, womp.
Here's the shame of it, man. Krypton in its second season, it was starting to get better, and by the end it got really better. It kind of built upon itself, and it promised a really cool looking season 3. And the biggest shame of it all is that now we have all these unfulfilled plot lines where it's like Jor-El, baby Jor-El, who finally got named Jor-El in season 2, by the way, because the baby had a different name. Point being, baby Jor-El is now heading to Earth, and like, where the heck are they going with this? I gotta know. And it's not in the cards, unfortunately.
Dragon, what's the deal with the DC streaming service right now? Like, is it like, I assume it still exists, right?
Well, this was on Sci-Fi, and yes, DC Universe still exists, and they still have shows. I know right now they're still figuring out what to do after Swamp Thing kind of ended. So they're thinking.
I'm just saying, like after Warner Brothers, I know Warner Brothers is doing a streaming service, so I'm wondering if that's going to fold into DC or what.
Honestly, Tiki, I think we'll know by the end of either by the end of this year or going into next year, because right now they have Harley Quinn up their sleeve for October, and
that's right, yeah.
And there is the Stargirl show. That's the last of the new live action stuff they kind of promised, and that one might change hands if they do Warner Brothers. So the Warner Brothers streaming service. Again, it's kind of a wait and see what we'll kind of know.
Harley Quinn looked like it showed potential. So
at the very least, Krypton. Again, the only hope that Krypton has is that DC Universe will pick it up because they put the first season on DC Universe, so it's possible. We'll see. I hear season 2 is going to come there, so I don't know. Here's the bigger thing: they introduced Lobo. They introduced Lobo in season 2, and Lobo was the best part of the season. Lobo is so cool and kind of like a bounty hunter. He's kind of like the Deadpool. He's kind of a vaguely Deadpool-esque character you could have. He has a healing factor. He's very, let's just say he's not kid friendly. He's the point is, like, Lobo is absolutely a really great, interesting character, and they were going to do a spin-off show, and I was thinking, here's what bugs me, because they confirmed they were doing a Lobo spin-off show, and then with this Krypton news, like, they hit you with both barrels at the same day, like, hey, not only is Krypton gone, that Lobo show we promised to spin-off, which I'm thinking, okay, Krypton's gone, well, Lobo essentially had the keys to the third season. Season 3 is going to be really Lobo heavy, and I was thinking, Lobo's the fail-safe. If anything happens to Krypton, it'll be continued in Lobo. Makes sense. And then Lobo's gone too. Like, oh, darn it.
Hit the whammy 2 times.
Yep, they're really piling it on today, kid. All right, okay, that brings it to, let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, yes. Okay, Andy Serkis. I'm sorry?
Oh, right. Yeah, so Venom. Now, here's the thing, Dragon. I haven't seen the Jungle Book movie that Serkis directed, but I haven't heard good things.
Swear to God, I kept meaning to check that out last year, but I never got to it.
Yeah, right. Like, I was going to check it out until I started hearing so many bad things about it. I gotta tell you, like, I'm not overly enthused about this news.
I remember I was trying to fill out our end of the year movie list last year. And I was like, okay, am I gonna watch this other version of Jungle Book, or am I gonna watch something else? I ended up watching something else. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. I'm just saying, like Andy Serkis is definitely like he's a very creative guy with a lot of ideas. I'm just not sure he's got enough experience behind the director's chair to. It's almost like it's like almost a. I mean, I guess he does have a lot of experience in the industry, Dragon. I guess that's the thing.
He
It's like,
does.
so we'll see what happens with it. And of course, Andy Serkis. I imagine with Venom, a lot of the effects might be upgraded because he's kind of a master of motion capture, and we could maybe get a lot more convincing Venom motion capture in the next movie.
That is kind of the universal hope for it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I tell you, look, Ruben Flesher. I think Ruben Flesher personally was painted into a corner with Venom where he wanted.
You know
to
what I
stuff.
like about Ruben Fletcher is that he had a directing style that felt very reminiscent of the mid 2000s.
He does, yeah.
And so I don't know, like I guess like Andy Serkis's movie might be a little bit flashier, but I kind of worry that I think the most appealing thing about the Venom franchise is the fact that it's a bit of a spin-off. It's a bit of a throwback to like pre-MCU comic book movies, and so I wonder if Serkis stepping in is going to maybe put a little bit more gloss on that. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, he's certainly not a mainstream director. In terms of directing, he's still very much on the fringes.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, Flesher, of course, I really did like Zombieland. You bear in mind you had Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick writing that, which I think is a big reason why I liked it. But the point being, he had a team that really jived with each other, especially the performers. They really felt comfortable in Flesher's directing style. And the thing that excited me most about Venom 2 is that, okay, now we're telling the story I want to see with Venom. Okay, it's Venom versus Carnage, and Carnage is being played by Woody Harrelson, albeit with a kind of a crappy wig, but still.
I think they're gonna adjust the wig.
I'm sure they will too.
Movie.
I'm sure they will, but the point being is like, hey, it's Woody Harrelson all the same. That's good casting, especially if we're going to have Carnage. Let's have a really good actor play Carnage.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, I was looking forward to, okay, now we have Flesher with one of his old playmates who's going to be playing a bad guy in the movie. And again, basically the best stuff of the Venom movie was Venom himself. Again, that movie was held back by all the kind of the origin-y stuff and the whole, and mainly the villain killed that movie, I would argue, with Venom. And that's the thing, like, going forward, like, hey, we had an upgrade in the villain, everything would be simple, and now we kind of taken Flesher out of the equation, I'm a little bummed by that. But again, Serkis might be an upgrade, so I'm optimistic about it. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right.
All right.
Now, have you seen the Dolomite Is My Name trailer?
No, I haven't, actually.
Well, just to keep it short.
That's the Eddie Murphy stand-up special, right?
No, it's not. Here's the thing. So, Dolomite Is My Name is, I want to say it's a biopic. If not, here's the thing. So, Dolomite was, you have this actor who basically portrayed a very famous blaxploitation character whose name was Dolomite, who essentially was.
Okay.
See, I recognize his name for a very obscure reference, Tiki. In the Suicide Squad Helipe movie, apparently the worst insult you can give someone in the martial arts community is Dolomite. Because basically it's like a horrible fighting style. And basically, again, just blaxploitation, really crappy, essentially really poorly communicated action. Or, again, at least amongst guys who actually know what they're doing when they're fighting,
Yeah.
That's kind of what I recognized it for. And apparently, it was a huge kind of blaxploitation deal, and I believe it's a biopic on that blaxploitation star. If not, then just kind of
I don't know why I thought it had anything to do with Eddie Murphy.
No, Eddie Murphy's in it. He plays Dolomite.
Okay.
Listen, what I can't remember is if it's in character, if like the whole movie's about the Dolomite character, but we're showing the behind the scenes of filming it. So I'm pretty sure that he's playing. So again, he's the actor who portrayed Dolomite. I'm pretty sure. The point is, it's a biopic about a blaxploitation icon, which is going to be on
Eddie Murphy. It's like it's one of the last things we saw him in was over 10 years ago, but he did get an Academy Award nomination for it, which is Dreamgirls.
Yep. He did.
So he does have roots in this kind of stuff,
He does, and this movie's going to be funny for sure, but it's also, again, it's going to be kind of it might be, I can't compare it to Birdman, but it's going to be about the struggling actor. You know what I mean? It's going to be kind
Well,
of
what can you compare to Birdman, to be
a
fair?
that's what I'm saying. Like I'm trying to find a good comparison here, but I'm just
It's fucking Birdman.
you know what I mean though, right? It's kind of a tale of the struggling actor. It's kind of what
Yeah,
the
I
trailer
get you.
is.
I get you.
Sure, there are going to be some funny. There's going to be a lot of comedy in there, of course, a lot of black exploitation fun, I'm sure. But it could be really interesting. It could be kind of tapping a little bit of that Dreamgirls Eddie Murphy. Point is, everyone's very excited. All the Eddie Murphy fans, I'm sure, are very excited for it. And
I'm honestly more excited for his stand-up special, if I'm being honest.
is he doing a? Are you sure? Is he doing a stand-up special?
I'm pretty sure he's doing one.
It sounds cool. I'd definitely check. If it's on Netflix, I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's on Netflix. That's the thing. I assume it would be on Netflix because Netflix seems to get all the good stand-up specials, but we'll see.
Well, of course, not
Well, all
all.
the good ones except for Mark Sipka, my special family special.
My
Of
thoughts
course.
exactly on Amazon. Folks. On Amazon
Not
Prime, check
myself.
it out.
Not myself.
If you need an hour, not even an hour, 50 minutes. You need 50 minutes to kill with just family fun, hilarity. Mark Sipka's your man.
All right.
Anywho. Okay, the last two things here. So Kevin Smith.
Dude, this is going too long. Okay, go.
Okay, real quick. Kevin Smith is doing a Masters of the Universe, essentially a continuation of Masters of the Universe. He-Man. He's doing He-Man on Netflix, an animated show that essentially picks up where the original show left off all the way back in 1983. It was kind of a passion project between him and Rob David. So he's kind of pitched to Netflix. For once, one of Kevin Smith's pitches to Netflix went through. Yay for him. And this is basically the culmination of what Kevin Smith's really kind of built the recent kind of couple of years of his career on with the podcasting and everything. Basically talking about the nostalgia done right. Like if we're gonna revel in something, let's do it right. Kind of the Jay and Silent Bob reboot of it all.
Right.
To Netflix and animation. So that's really cool.
Dragon, let me ask you something. Is Moose Jaws dead? What's up with Moose Jaws?
I believe Moose Jaws is. I would assume it's still in production, but here's the thing. He constantly goes to Canada, which presumably he's shooting bits and pieces of Moose Jaws when he goes there. However, I want to say Moose Jaws is still on, but he swapped it with Clerks 3. I want to say that's what's happening.
Okay, that makes sense.
The point being, like, he originally was going to be that, but then he's kind of been reinvigorated with Jay and Silent Bob reboots. That kind of swapped out Moose Jaws with Clerks 3. He's like, by heck or high water, I'm going to do Clerks 3, that sort of mentality. All right, let's talk about the last thing we're very excited to talk about.
Yes, kidding.
Season 2.
Now, folks, if you don't know what kidding is, man, you really should. This is one of
Yes, sir. Seriously, folks. Kidding is a masterpiece of a show. It really is. It's a Showtime series. It's basically the big thing Jim Carrey has done in recent years. Basically it's kind of like if you loved Won't You Be My Neighbor, if you've been kind of reveling in the Mr. Rogers stuff that's been happening recently, as great as that is, as pure as that is, this is kind of the more psychologically interesting version of that.
Yes, indeed. So I don't want to bore you guys with like speculation because, frankly, Dragon, a lot of the speculation we'd have to give season 1 spoilers in order to speculate on to begin with. But suffice to say, folks, the reason to check out Kidding is Jim Carrey. It's kind of like a series of unfortunate events, you know. It's just like, the other cast is good too. I mean, well, Frank Langella, especially. Frank Langella is an excellent, Frank Langella is almost as great as Jim Carrey in this show.
He's so
and
good.
Catherine Keener as well. Judy Greer, they're all solid. I would say the weak points in the in the series, acting wise, are the kid actors, but that's a different story.
Well, it's more like one kid, honestly, but
it's more like that one kid and also his sidekick friends.
Okay, well, but the point being, I would argue Kidding season 1 is a masterpiece with that one story exception of not Will's friends. Basically, the whole Will and his friends subplot, that's the only weak part of that season, but everything else is it's flawless the way that story is communicated. It'll make you cry with how beautiful it is, especially episode 8, folks. Watch Kidding and then check out the trailer for season 2, because season 2 is going places, man. And that's from the get-go. From the get-go, they knew. Basically, Kidding season 1 ends at a point where it's not like a definitive ending where, okay, there's more story to tell. You could end it here, sure, but there's definitely a story. There's a dot. You want to see what happens in season 2. So kind of blow the walls off everything, and like now, what's our new status quo like? And it's going to be very interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. So
On the TV.
crap. Okay. So Dragon, I'm just realizing that I'm gonna have to type up everything as we go. So just keep going.
All right. Well, folks, we watched a lot of August was definitely built on stuff. Tegan and I did not see anything theatrical. Am I right? Did you go to the movies this month?
Well, yeah, I went to the movies a few times.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry. No, I'm thinking. I don't know. Wait, I remember you. Here's the thing. You posed. Sorry, you posed the question to me. That's what I'm thinking of. No, I have not gone to the. I have not gone to the
I
theaters.
mean, I've done a couple reviews with Sandy of theatrical movies this month, Dragon. You should know this.
Yes, yes. Sorry, this. Sorry, it's. Sorry, folks. Faux pas on my part there. Regardless, I
The
actually did
month
not
that
see.
Tiki does not see at least a couple movies in theaters, that's going to be a very dark month, Dragon. Either
Then
there's
you'll.
like either there's like really nothing playing, or probably more realistically, I'm just going to be financially very hard up.
Yep. Now you'll know what it's like.
Right.
No, regardless, the point is, I was very stream happy this month, and of course, I caught up on a lot of stuff TV wise, as well as I kind of discovered a few series, and again, it was a really big TV month. Of course, something that Tiki and I both uh, kind of experienced the new season of a show on Netflix.
This was such glorious trash, Dragon. It was 13 hours of my life that I'll never get back, but I kind of don't want them back. 13 Reasons Why season 3. Folks, 13 Reasons Why, I'm going to say it right now. It's not a good show. It's got great performances within the not good show, but season 3 was just all over the place, Dragon. It was a roller coaster ride.
That it was. I mean, to keep it simple, good story with a really messy execution narrative. I think it has it raises some great questions, but again, I feel like we kind of I think we're a little confused in how we're answering those questions. But again, good story at its core, though.
Mhm. All right. So yeah, The Boys, Dragon. I have only seen the first 4 episodes, but I can tell you, I really, really am enjoying it. Here's the thing, Dragon. Here's the thing. The Boys, incredibly nihilistic show. So I have to be in the right frame of mind to watch it. So that's why I haven't been like totally like binged into it. 13 Reasons Why I binged because we had to do a spoiler cast on it. And because honestly, 13 Reasons Why is a very bingeable show because it has a stupid mystery every season that's just like a candy bar for the brain to figure out. But this show is very much not a candy bar for the brain, Dragon. This show is like a hungry man for the brain. And I will say that, and it's greasy. It maybe isn't good for you, but it's got some substance to it.
That it does. It's definitely for me. It's definitely the darkest thing with superheroes I've seen ever. I mean, Garth Ennis. Basically, it's Preacher meets Watchmen. Again, the simple way of putting it. It's Preacher meets Watchmen. It's I believe me, take it. You just seen the tip. You've seen the tip of the iceberg in terms of screwed up stuff, and
I
you're
believe you. I believe you. I did get to the plane crash scene. Anyone who's watched probably knows what I'm talking about.
okay.
And that was kind of like the big blowing open, like, oh my god, like there's way more going on here.
Yep, that is the big for me. That's the big hook of the whole series. I mean, look, honestly, for me, the thing that happens the very first opening minutes of the show for me, like the thing with our speedster character, let's say, that hooks me on the show. But the I would argue the best moment in the entire season is the plane moment that you're referring to. And we won't spoil what happens. You gotta watch it, folks. I will warn you, it's not for the faint of heart. This show, it is really not for the faint of heart. Again, Garth Ennis, he's
Yeah, like I
very
said, that's why I can't just sit down and binge it. I got to kind of like at this rate, I'm kind of like at a 1 episode per week kind of rate it watching it, and that's kind of how I like it, to be honest.
yeah, it already got approved for a season 2, and there's definitely some story to tell there. I love they knew they were getting a season 2 as well. So let's just say they know where they're doing with the story, and they've already like released the trailer for season 2. You got to earn that trailer, little mister. You got to earn it by watching the rest of that season. Anyway, so yes, let's press on here. Let's kind of keep the train a moving. Oh, hey, speaking of train, my associate and I have also watched Infinity Train and Beyond. No, I'm kidding. Sorry, folks. Dumb joke. Forgive me. Seriously though, Infinity Train. Infinity Train. Again, we're kind of keeping ourselves occupied before the Steven Universe movie next month. So, in doing so, we checked out Infinity Train. Infinity Train was very. It was very rewarding. I felt, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it was satisfying to be sure. Dragon, I don't think it's quite on the same level as Over the Garden Wall, and I keep begging you, you need to check out Over the Garden Wall. That's really the true masterpiece of these Cartoon Network miniseries. But in terms of like a worthy follow up to Over the Garden Wall, as far as the TV miniseries is concerned, Infinity Train was great, to be sure. Now, I have more reservations about a season 2 than most people do. Like most people say like, "Oh, it's an infinity train. You can tell any sorts of stories." And I'm like, "Yeah, but the one story that you did tell with this, the Tulip story, is very much done. Like the Tulip story is something that I honestly don't really want to see her in season 2. So, is there more to explore in the world building? Yes. And if they can create a new character that's as compelling as Tulip, I'm all for it. I just am worried that they're just going to have like that they're just going to conceive a cheap way to get Tulip back on the train. And that's what I'm worried about. And that's why Over the Garden Wall hasn't had a sequel. And that's just the way I like it when it comes to that property.
I mean, let me ask you this: would it be contrived if Tulip faced another, relatable issue? Like, if they gave her like a relatable enough reason to be back on the train, would you
It
buy
depends
it?
on how they do it. I mean, it's like if it's realistic enough, then sure.
Again, I agree with your point there. Again, it's going to be a buy to get her on that train, so they better make it good if they do that. But again,
Yeah.
we do know there are other passengers on that train. We do know that for a fact. And they kind of set that up. Now there are many other stories to tell. Absolutely, of course. For any of you just like, what the heck is Infinity Train? It's basically a girl working through a kind of a, let's say, a divorce personified by an adventure on an infinity train. It is, again, it's the simple sell of it, I guess, but it is quite good. And again, it's very witty comedy and just great in the short forms. I was an absolute treat for me.
All right. So, Dragon, you just started a new show. Well, not a new show, but you just started binging a show that's been around for a while.
Yes, I finished. Yes, I
Oh, you
finished.
finished. Okay.
That's the thing. I like to wait till I'm finished the show to talk about. So I finished it
Right,
within
right.
this month. I kind of started. I guess I started. I don't know if I started at the start of August or if I started towards the end of July because I can't recall. I think. Oh, right, it must have been July because I wanted to bring it up on July Memoirs, but I didn't finish it. That's why. Regardless, so I finished Chuck. So Chuck is, of course, the famed Zach Levi shows. Kind of what gave him his bread and butter. That would lead him to things like Tangle, and lead him to Tangle, lead him to a little bit of the MCU, and of course, ultimately lead him to Shazam. My friend, see, I have a buddy who loves Chuck, and basically when we would talk about the oncoming Shazam or a little bit of like Zach Levi would just kind of show up. Like, he's at the Comic-Con last year. I kind of like a brief
Oh,
passing by, like, hey, look, hey, a little moment there. But essentially, my buddy keeps hyping up like the premise of Chuck to me. He's like, I don't know if I'm gonna like that show. I mean, I've seen a little bit of it. I hear good things, but I never looked into it. And it basically, by happenstance, was on Amazon. I binged it and I watched episode one. Okay, I'll see how the first episode is, and we'll see how it goes. And I was hooked, man. It was great. It was way better than I expected. Levi is perfect in the show. He's such a compelling character. He's such a lovable, likable character. So that's my hook. It's like, okay, I care about this guy. I want to see what happens to him. Just this really nice guy who essentially you have essentially a guy who was he's kicked out of college for a reason that's not his fault, and he ends up at a buy more. And basically, a buy more is kind of your Best Buy equivalent. They kind of buy their own within universe. They kind of call it a buy more.
mhm.
And he was overqualified being the ID. He was like a few things away from getting a full degree for basically the guy could be in software engineering and everything. The point is the guy was really smart, but he was kind of canned. And basically he gets wrapped up in the world of espionage. I won't tell you how, but it's quite ingenious, the premise. And see, I'd recommend season 1 and season 2 to you. It goes for 5 seasons. Adam Baldwin and Yvonne Stravosky, who's in Dexter, and Adam Baldwin is, I know him for his voice work, and I got to see him finally kind of in living, breathing live action. I got to tell you, he was delightful. The show just subverts a lot of expectations. It does a lot of really great stuff. Has a tremendously likable supporting cast. The thing is, the thing that kind of pushed me to finally check out Chuck was one of the things I watched last month. talked up. It was basically the thing you watched, Tiki, the United We Fan, the thing about how TV shows are brought back by the fan campaign.
Yes.
And that talked about the fan campaign for Chuck. It was brought back because Subway, because they constantly promoted Subway in the show, and that got them back. Essentially, they had a big promotion that, Zach Levi made
Pawn
Subway.
Stars also constantly promoted Subway, and that was like a big joke of that show. But I'm sorry, I digress. I'm getting off track with that. Somebody stole my Subway. Anyways, go ahead.
The point being, Subway kind of saved Chuck, and that just captivated me so much. You know what? I've been hearing about Chuck long enough. That Subway thing is enough for me to check out the show. It was so good. Subway brought it back. I got to see how this goes. And I watched it. And
Dragon, you know what I remember Chuck from? I remember it was like either the lead-in. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the lead-in to Heroes at one point.
I buy that. That makes sense. Anyway, so basically, here are the two problems with Chuck for me. Chuck is a lovely show, and I would very well recommend it. There's only two things I will caution you. Because this show gets canceled essentially one or two times, again, you can kind of tell where the seasons have an end point. We're like, okay, well, that's kind of where their ending is, or it's kind of like, yeah, there's definitely more story to tell, but it might just be the ending, depending on how you look at it. So there are a couple points where that happens. Basically, the first two seasons, like that's a solid story, and then basically it leads into a 3 where we upgrade the premise. Basically, the show keeps upgrading itself. I don't mean that necessarily in a good way. I mean, it keeps the things change, and it's like, okay, we have a new status quo we're going into a new season with, and I rolled with it, so I'm fine with it. But it's like, let's say it's a pretty set in stone premise for 2 seasons. Then 3 is like, okay, well, now we've broadened the world a little bit for him. He's becoming more like a spy as it goes forward. Okay, now he's like more in the field than he would be in the first 2 seasons, right?
Sure, yeah.
And then basically it kind of goes on from there. And basically the problem is things get more convoluted. Basically, it's like every person in Chuck's life is somewhat involved in espionage. It's like, okay, now this is getting to a bit of a buy more, one could say. And there are 2 supporting characters that I hated from the start that are in the show for the whole time. There's
that's always problematic.
It's a very small part, but they're just annoying to me, and it might just be me. I hate Lester and Jeff. For anyone who's seen the show, well, then you know who they are. It's basically these 2 kind of slothy kind of members of the Buy More who don't really add or subtract anything to the show. It's like, oh god, these guys again.
Kind of like the bad version of Badger and Skinny Pete.
It's perfect. Yes, yes. But again, seriously, I would those 2
At least
characters
they don't have as much screen time as Dake and Dabby.
Seriously, oh god, don't bring that up. And you hurt my soul when you brought those 2 up. God. God, those are 2 of the worst supporting.
The quote-unquote comic relief characters from the Chuck Lorre show, Disjointed, for anyone who's curious. A show that Dragon oddly, committed to following through to the end, and I gave up on midway through season 2, even though I'm the stoner out of the 2 of us.
Yeah.
Anyways,
was not for me.
It wasn't for me either, man. In fact, that what's funny is much how 2.5 Men is fucking nerd blackface to a certain extent. I consider that show to be stoner blackface. Especially the Dake and Dabby characters, which you can understand why.
Right. Oh, I absolutely agree. Those are stoner blackface. I'm not even a stoner. I'm not even a stoner.
I mean, those guys give Kevin Smith stoners a bad name. You
absolutely.
know what I mean?
Yeah. I think if you turn wearing an overcoat into a
okay,
racial...
can we please stop talking about fucking Disjointed? I'm sorry I brought it up.
Okay, point is, on the Buy More alone, on the alter ego, and basically
that could be a Patreon podcast.
Point being, on the mundanities alone and the supporting cast, that's the reason to stay. That's the comfort reason to say, oh man, I'm enjoying it. I like living in this show. It's a comfy show to live in. So Chuck is fun. All right.
Okay. All right, so Dragon, I saw a very controversial stand-up special on Netflix. Dave Chappelle, Sticks and Stones. Now, Dragon, I'm curious. Do you have any experience at all with Chappelle's show?
Not really, no.
Okay, as far as I'm concerned, with all due respect to Jess Giglet, because honestly, I think Jess Giglet is in the pantheon when it comes to this, Chappelle's show is the greatest sketch comedy show of all time, in my humble opinion.
Have you ever seen Mr. Show? outside of that
Yes,
one
I've
thing.
seen Mr. Show. Yes, and I think Mr. Show is another solid contender, but I think Chappelle's Show is more consistent than Mr. Show.
I just want to give
Because
Mr. Show its
basically
due.
every sketch that Chappelle's Show ever knocked out was a home run. Um, I'm not saying I like Chappelle just because of his show. I'm just saying, Dragon, it might be something you want to look into if you're into sketch comedy, because Chappelle's Show is just absolute knockout. If there's one episode of Chappelle's Show I would recommend to you, Dragon, it's the Wayne Brady episode. The Wayne Brady episode where Wayne Brady basically takes over the show, and in doing show, he also takes over Chappelle's life. That's an iconic episode, and it also comes with the classic line: "Is Wayne Brady gonna have to choke a bitch?"
Okay, remind me. This is Wayne Brady, the game show host, right?
Yes. Wayne Brady, the friendly, smiling, daytime Emmy Award-winning "Whose Line Is It Anyway" guy.
I love that guy.
Well, watch that episode then, man. Watch the Wayne Brady episode of Chappelle's Show, and if you like what you see, then go through the rest of the series. But
I might
if you're
look
not,
into that.
yeah. Oh man, I'm very curious. If you, that's like, it's an iconic episode of TV as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Dave Chappelle, Dragon. Historically speaking, Dave Chappelle is actually a part of history now. Do you know why?
Why?
Because he was the person to host Saturday Night Live the week that Trump got elected.
Ooh.
And he made a speech that was basically, in few words, give him a chance. Like, I feel like basically he's giving us a chance, so let's give him a chance, or something to that extent.
So he put himself out there.
Yes, Dragon, I don't want to get political with this at all. I do not want to voice my opinions at all about any of the Trump stuff. I kind of shield myself from a lot of it just because my life is too depressing as it is.
As far as we're concerned, Trump's a guy in a big house. That's all we know about him. All
right. Right. But Dragon, basically in doing so, Chappelle kind of made himself a little bit of a pariah in the stand-up community. If he wasn't already for ditching Chappelle's Show, do you know anything about how that went down?
No, I don't. What happened? Oh, well, did we have time to get into it, or I don't know?
Just the long and short of it is that his stand-up career basically got compromised by Chappelle's Show because people would always just shout quotes at him on stage. And
I did hear that.
Yeah, and it kind of ruined his mental health, and he went into retreat in Africa for a period of time.
Right.
To be honest with you, Dave Chappelle would make a fascinating biopic. But yeah, so basically this special, Dragon, this special is the first, it's the first special where he's really addressing the kind of like the post-Trump, post-Harvey Weinstein, like Me Too culture that we're in. And people aren't going to like what he has to say a lot of the time in this special. And it's an uncomfortable sit, but I feel like it's a worthy sit, because I feel like one of the things I've always respected about Chappelle is the fact that he just is able to put things out there and put them into context. And I always vouch for the fact that I think that Chappelle's Show should be taught in sociology class, because I think Chappelle's Show is one of the greatest. It's one of the greatest parodies of racism and race culture that we've ever seen in any sort of modern day comedy. And that kind of like, Chappelle's Show is not a race driven show. It's a show that pokes fun of racism. You know what I mean? It's not racist, but it pokes fun at the idea of racism. There's a very, very thin line, but I feel like Chappelle's Show rides that line. And so this is kind of like Dave. First of all, you can tell, I don't want to be too critical about this, but just you can tell that Dave's getting older and his delivery isn't as fast as it used to be. Like he kind of lacks that sort of like Bugs Bunny kind of like quick-witted demeanor that he had in his early HBO stand-up specials. And that's not any fault of his own, of course. He's getting older. He's very much more world-weary than he used to be. So I'd say for fans of Chappelle, this special is definitely worth a watch, but definitely don't expect something like For What It's Worth, which is probably his best stand-up special, because it's not anywhere close to that. But like I said, it's an interesting special just to put the context of the times from Dave's point of view. I think Dave is one of the more influential kind of like outside of the box speakers and thinkers in not just the comedy scene, but just Hollywood in general right now. And he is a little bit of a pariah for it, but I respect him all the more for putting it out there and putting it on the line. And there's definitely some moments in this special that were just absolutely just made me applaud. I don't want to get into what they are, because like I said, a lot of it's a little politically driven. But yeah, like I said, if you're in, I don't, this is certainly not something for like baseline, like, hey, who's this Chappelle fellow? I'm gonna check him out. No, like if you want a good baseline entry into Chappelle's comedy, watch the Wayne Brady episode of Chappelle's show. But if you're into Chappelle, if you've seen, if you know all the Chappelle sketches by heart, if you've seen all his specials, this is a worthy addition into the specials. But it's definitely not among his best specials, but it's among his most important specials, I would say.
All right, so you'd recommend it?
I would recommend it, but like I said, not for the entry level person who wants to get into Chappelle, more for the hardened fan who wants to hear Dave's take. So, yeah. All right. Next up.
All right. What's my name? Muhammad Ali. So this, okay, so I kind of watched this by a happenstance, because you know me, I love a really in-depth documentary about an athlete. Again, OJ Made in America being case in point. Bear in mind, this isn't like a 5 hours. This isn't like kind of like a 5-part sit, but this is like basically HBO. What they've been doing is they've been doing these 2-part, really kind of in-depth career documentaries lately. Like they did one for Gary Shandling last year, I really loved, called The Zen Diaries of Gary Shandling. And here they did one about Muhammad Ali, a very similar style. It was kind of breaking them up in half. And they also did one earlier with like Michael Jackson. Again, less flattering, mind you, but they did one with Leaving Neverland.
Oh, Michael Jackson, that was definitely something that Dave Chappelle touched on, by the way.
I had a feeling he did.
Yep.
So this had a really big director on it, though. This was Antoine Fuqua. Now, Antoine, yeah, he of course famously directed Training Day, and really kind of upper echelon of directors.
Sure.
And it was a very important story. You talk about Muhammad Ali. Now, what fascinated me about this is that this really is less about Muhammad Ali, the man. I mean, it covers that a little bit in part 1. And this is kind of my gripe with it, though, is that the focus is purely on the boxing side of things. It's purely on like the boxing career. And here's what I like about it. I think part 2 does it better here. So the idea, I mean, here's the thing. I think I love what we're doing, but I just think we drag it out a little bit in part 1, where basically it's Muhammad Ali, Muhammad Ali as he was, the big boisterous, like, don't call me Cassius Clay, call me Muhammad Ali, once he kind of found kind of a deeper meaning to things and everything. And it's a good story in itself. And I've seen Muhammad Ali documentaries that kind of focus on that. And this is more focused on, he's the very boisterous, like, this guy could not be beaten. That's what part 1's all about. We build up the legacy of Muhammad Ali. This guy is just, he's unhuman. He's inhuman. The man cannot be beat. And I know this sounds really obvious, like, of course it's going to go there, but yeah, it goes there in a really solid way here. In part 2, it's like Muhammad Ali. It's like you see an idol getting older and getting weaker, and that's what fascinated me about part 2. Is like, oh yeah, he can't do this anymore. He's kind of slowing down, and of course towards the very ending, it's not a huge focus of the piece where he does eventually succumb to Parkinson's. But again, it's like it kind of like, was it all worth it? Sort of a question. Did he really put himself out there, really committed to everything? And again, the guy was like true to his word and legacy. He wanted to go out on a high note, and that's kind of like it's quite gripping in part 2. In part 1, I think it's there, but I just feel we kind of like it's a little bit of generic boxing stuff in part 1. It's like that's outside of that slowdown. I think it's a really solid piece. But again, I think both parts are probably in the grand scheme of things. If it was like. If both parts were an hour, I think it might be in better shape. I don't know. I think they're both like an hour and a half. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But it's solid. Again, I can definitely see his style kind of worked in there. I think it definitely feels like a passion project. It feels like you really love your subject on this one. So it's it was solid. All right.
Okay, so finally we watched Rocko's Modern Life, Static Cling. Dragon, we already did a full podcast on this, and we're running behind schedule, so we don't need to talk too much about this. But I think in terms of recapturing the style of the original show, I think it was more successful than Invader Zim was. In terms of telling a complete narrative, I'm not sure if it was as successful, but then again, this is meant to be a special. Zim is technically a movie, so I think I can, give some points for that. I've heard people say that this is like an SJW agenda movie, and I mean, look, even if it is, I feel like it's, there's definitely some political undertones here for sure, but even if it is, I think it's handled maturely and it's not in your face and it's not shoved down your throat at all. And I think it's fine.
Yeah, sure. I pretty much echo the similar sentiment. So, I mean, the other thing for me is it's Nick recapturing my childhood nostalgia and kind of a little special there, and it's not really missing a beat in like what Rocco's style was, what we're doing there. It's like they had me at gaze into my nipples of the future. It's like they had me. It's like, yes, okay, I'm back watching Rocco again, man. It was such kind of a magical feeling to re-experience. And yeah, I mean, they really went for it with the story, and they didn't play around. They got it right, and I got to appreciate them for that.
Uh-huh.
All right. So without further ado, let's talk about our August lineup here. The stuff that we saw.
Only an hour and 15 minutes in.
Yeah, well, again, it's kind of a marathon podcast. It's kind of a three-parter.
It is. You're right.
Kind of a three-parter in one. Kind of a mini endgame.
All right, so Invader Zim, Enter the Florpus. Like I said, Dragon, this is it's definitely more ambitious in terms of telling a complete story than Rocco is. I really appreciate how this movie starts out in an almost lethargic place with Dib in the chair and Zim literally sitting in a toilet for like 10 years. But then by the end of it, it's like huge cataclysmic stakes and, like worlds clashing into each other and the tallest about to blow up Earth. Like, there's a lot of stakes by the end of this movie. And it kind of like cleverly ratchets it up little by little. I will say probably the biggest flaw with this movie is I don't think it's as gross as it could have been. Like, the animation is definitely smoothed up. It doesn't have that same sort of grime and grit. And I feel like Rocco kind of maintained that level of grime and grit that this necessarily didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like again, even with Rocco, we have like the old booger jokes, which I never liked in Rocco, but they brought him back.
right.
I can't take away points for that. Do I like it? No, but did they remain truthful to it? They did.
I've heard people criticize Gaz's characterization in this, and honestly, I don't mind it because I feel like she's more three-dimensional in this than she was in the series. But she is a big fan favorite, so I can see where the "she's not my Gaz" people are coming from, but I don't personally agree with it.
Not my Gaz. That's the protest I want to see.
Yeah, so some people are saying that.
Not my Gaz. Look, to keep it simple, Invader Zim is something I'm not exactly in love with. Again, not for any, I think it's kind of a genius concept, but I think I appreciate it as all get out. It's just not my taste exactly, but without getting all those reasons why. I already did that when we did Enter the Florpus. But to keep it simple, I think this leaned heavy on what I liked about Zim, all the clever stuff about it. And again, yes, they cleaned it up. Did that bother me? Not at all, really. It didn't bother me at all.
Right.
But again, that's just me. Even though I've seen all the Invader Zim episodes, I can't call myself a diehard fan. So, I mean, yeah, is it 100%? Still probably not. But, do we linger on pudding jokes? Yeah, we do. But look, it was better than I expected. And the animation, the opening of this movie is artfully so beautiful. Like, we do the anime Invader Zim. It's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, for sure.
Like that. Animation-wise, we blend all these methods, and it's very true, like what the series kind of did with,
And even though it's lifted from a comic, I just think that the opening confrontation between Dib and Zim is fucking iconic.
I'm saying all the cleverness that I always appreciate about Invader Zim was very well represented. So I think at least to the casual Invader Zim fan, I think you're going to be
Dib. We know each other.
And Horvitz, man, Richard Horvitz, he's
Richard Horvitz is on fire in this movie, man. I don't think he's ever been more energetic.
Oh God, he's so good. Point being, so Invader Zim Enter the Florpus, I thought it was really solid. It was good.
All right. So next up is something that you turned me on to. I just finished it right before we went on air.
Cool.
That's the Amazing Jonathan documentary.
On Hulu.
Yes, the one on Hulu. Yes. Now, Dragon, this is a documentary about the art of documentaries.
Yes.
And I found that very fascinating. And of course, it's got a subject that's very much an unreliable narrator at the heart of it. Well, the subject of the documentary is an unreliable narrator. The subject of the film is not an unreliable. Dragon, this is a Russian doll. Would you care to explain it?
See, second to Jim and Andy, probably the most meta documentary you're going to watch. So, folks, the key, I don't want to give away all the secrets, but let's just put it this way. The Amazing Jonathan documentary. So this is, Ben Berman. Ben Berman's the documentarian. He's doing, essentially, we start off, he's doing a documentary on a dying comedy magician, the Amazing Jonathan. If many people, did you ever recognize this guy from Comedy Central? Did you ever see this guy?
No, I can't say I have. I've seen Piff the Magic Dragon, and his act kind of reminds me of this guy. But
chances are he may or may not have been inspired by a lot of the famous magicians, especially the comedy magicians.
I wouldn't be surprised if Piff was inspired by him.
I know Penn and Teller know this guy, so I don't know if they were inspired by him necessarily. But like the point is, like the non-traditional approach towards magic is very much in line.
And that's definitely Piff's style, because Piff is literally just a very dry British man in a dragon suit performing magic.
Sure, and you have like a Penn and Teller with brooms. They tell you how the trick is done, but they're having fun with you.
Right, exactly.
Anyway, so the point being, Amazing Jonathan, basically he's kind of like a gritty, basically kind of the Chris Angel before there was a Chris Angel, only more of kind of a shticky comedy act. That's kind of the idea. It's kind of a prop comic version of Chris Angel. It's kind of what Amazing Jonathan is at its core. But the early version, the grittier version.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, again, one of the most unique documentaries I've seen this year so far for me. Just the one.
It's a good one for sure.
And basically, where the story,
I think it's probably a step above the fire documentaries, which I think were probably the best documentaries of the year before this.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, basically Act 1 is like we take the traditional documentary, okay, we're talking about the guy, we're getting to know the subject, okay, pretty straightforward, right? And then basically at the end of Act 1, it's like, now we turn everything on its head, where we introduce the idea of multiple documentary crews. I won't say how many, but multiple documentary crews.
Right.
Because just, Tiki, when they have those reveals, I'm like going like, oh my God. Just like every time. Every time that happens. Basically, here's the thing. So here's the gutsiest thing the movie does. We have a big narrative shift with that, where basically the documentary becomes a documentary within a documentary, within multiple documentaries.
Like I said, it becomes a Russian doll.
Absolutely, and then it kind of leads to the bigger questions like what is real, and it's very much it's basically it's not about the subject, but it's about what the subject represented, where you weren't sure what's real. It's about like it's a very interesting approach to doing a documentary on a magician, especially an unreliable kind of unreliable subject magician.
I will say, Dragon, the subject matter of Jonathan himself, very diverse character in this film, because he goes from incredibly wildly unlikable in certain moments to, I will say, I don't want to give anything away, but there's a particular moment towards the very end of the movie where he relays a bit of news to his mother. Dragon, that was just tears. I mean, that was one of the most powerful
I knew that
moments.
Would get you.
That was one of the most powerful moments of any film this year, I think.
That moment is amazing with what gets pulled off there. But again,
I love how understated that moment is. It's not like a big over the top victory or anything. It's just, it's very true to life. Anyways,
the point being, Amazing Jonathan, I would highly, folks, if you want a unique viewing experience, check out the Amazing Jonathan documentary on Hulu. It's bold yet unique, and you have to, whether you like it or not, whether it's not really a documentary about the guy, but again, it's come more in the style of the guy. It's something to respect, and something that I think warrants checking out. And again, we'll get to another. There's kind of a PS.
Basically, you see how the documentary comes together as the film is going on. It's kind of like I said, to play to the Russian doll theory of it all. It's like it's a making of documentary about a documentary.
Absolutely. Believe me, folks, it's trippy to say the least. And there's a bit of a PS to this documentary, which I'm going to get to later. I might blow your mind a little bit on this, but we'll get to that later. Okay. Anyway.
Okay. Next, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one, but scary stories to tell in the dark. Ooh, scary. Dragon, quick way to put it, this movie's worth seeing for the creature effects alone, because they're honestly knockout. like they're definitely just, they achieved their goal of just, let's recreate those iconic, the iconic illustrations from the children's books. What this movie doesn't achieve, however, is any real sort of pacing or characters or Dragon. Here's the thing. I wish this movie would have just been an anthology, because the creature designs are on point. And honestly, most of the sequences are also pretty on point. It's just the actual framing device in the movie itself and the story that just gets Dragon. I call it suffers from Pirates of the Caribbean sequel syndrome. Where it's just like, as the movie goes on, it just gets more and more confusing, and they introduce more and more rules about how these scary stories are happening, and it's just unsatisfying, man. It really is. Like I said, the creature designs are really, really on point, but that's really about all there is. That Dragon, and this ends with one of the most egregious, like, hey, this is a cliffhanger because we know there's gonna be a sequel. It's like, because everyone cares so much about the characters of Augie and Chuck, Dragon. It's like, forget about Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth, Dragon. 2019's power couple is Augie and Chuck from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. We gotta save them, man.
Not Augie.
That's what I'm saying, man. Not Augie.
This is his month, after all.
Oh, God. The character's name is August, yeah. So yeah, Scary Stories, very much a disappointing movie with some good practical effects in it. That's about all I can say. Really kind of just blah.
Fair enough.
All right. Next up.
All right. So this, Batman Hush. So of course, for those who may not be aware, of course, there was a book called Batman Hush. It's a very famed book. Basically, Tiki, the one.
This is the Tommy Elliott one, right?
Yes, this is the Tommy Elliott one. Basically, simply put, Batman Hush is the comic it's a summer blockbuster of comics. That's kind of what it is. This is when Jim Lee first did Batman. So Jim Lee, of course, the famed artist, now is like the chief creative officer. Like, I don't know if he's I don't know if he's the editor necessarily, but I know I think he's like the chief creative officer. One thing, he and Jeff Johns kind of share a really important role, which I forget if Jeff Johns is still in that role or not. But regardless, Jim Lee's a big deal. And Jim Lee, really, his big kind of splash in the DC was this book, which basically every panel, every image in the book was basically an excuse to draw a character in the first time you ever saw the Jim Lee style, and possibly even still, probably the best you're ever going to see Jim Lee style in this book, probably. I'd argue with the exception of how the Joker looks in that story, but everything else is really sweet, though. Regardless, so this is the point. This is a book that, let me put it this way: story-wise, it's like Under the Red Hood. Remember Under the Red Hood? It readapted the story with the original writer, and it was tremendous.
Right.
It was an improvement. This, well, not necessarily the same case.
Okay.
Now, be clear. What I'm saying is, Hush is a very flawed story in the comic, and they could have improved things, and they kind of went the Red Hood approach. They did improve certain things, but you're not going to have a lot of happy Hush fans, is what I'm getting at here. So your diehard Hush fans are not going to like this movie, because here's what they did. It doesn't bother me, but here's what they did. So what I should say, and I'm going to try to keep this brief because I always had to bring this up with these movies, this was one of the in-continuity DC original animated movies. What that means is that they're kind of stuck in like the animation style, which basically is based on Jim Lee style. So for a change, it actually worked this time, because it's Jim Lee.
Well, the clock's right twice a day.
That's the thing. For a change, it actually fit. Now, is it a perfect fit? No, but at least out of all the movies that kind of stuck with that style, at least it felt natural this time.
Uh-huh.
And basically, remember, they have a book that's every shot's a money shot, so it's going to be really hard to maintain animation, kind of give it the oomph that it has, especially when you have to kind of stick within like the continuity of all these other. Again, the only two movies that we've had been actually good in this thing were The Death of Superman, and the best one ever in the style has been Suicide Squad: Hell to Pay. That's been the best one. Oh my god, I love that movie.
Yeah.
The point being, they've had a few successes lately. They're kind of on an upswing now. So far, the upswing has either been tolerable to like, okay, this is pretty good. Like Reign of the Superman was versus something like
Reign of the Superman was actually that was disappointing.
I'm saying, take my word for it. Comparatively, it was a step up, just compared to some of the earlier. Everything before Suicide Squad: Hell to Pay was kind of a.
I believe it.
I guess for anyone who's listening, I mean, the Justice League Dark was also okay. That was the beginning of the upswing. Then Suicide Squad blew it out of the water. So that's kind of where we're at on that. Regardless, my point is, so when that was, hey, we're doing Batman Hush, yay! It's in the in-continuity movies. No, that's kind of the mentality of a lot of people going to this movie. But it was a solid film, believe it or not. Batman Hush was solid enough. It was solid enough. It prioritizes. Let me put it this way. The priorities are straight enough in telling a Batman Catwoman story, which is in that story. It's not the main focus. The main focus in the book is Thomas Elliot. That's the whole mystery of, like, who is Hush and and we introduce the Thomas Elliot character. And of course, spoiler alert. You and I have gone through Gotham. I've told you this countless times. In essence, Tommy Elliot becomes Hush. That's kind of the idea. So So they kind of refocus things here, where it's not about the mystery of who Hush is, because again, if you know the book you're going into, you know what the joke is essentially. Like, okay, well, we know that Thomas Elliot's going to be really important to the story, and it subverts that. So I give it points for that. But again, you would imagine the diehard fans like, I want to see the book adapted the way it's supposed to be. They're not going to be happy with it. I can't blame them for that, because that's a really big thing that they've changed. But I would argue there is a mystery in this story. It's just not like a big Thomas Elliot reliant mystery. But again, the core of the story is the relationship between Batman and Catwoman, which the recent Batman comics with Tom King have been doing, and they've been doing really well with. So again, this is I think they did pretty well with that relationship and the mystery that they did do. It's but there are a few places where they're kind of landlocked in that continuity. It's like, oh god, do we have to be stuck in the continuity? Why do we have to go back to that well again? Not as bad as some other movies, but it's like, yeah, we're still like, I'm having a good time with some other stuff in this movie. Why do we have to be? It's like a little reminder here and there. Worst thing in the movie, easily. Worst Joker I've ever heard.
That's what I've heard. Yeah. So who does it?
Okay, so this Jason's here. We have a really good voice actor, Jason Spizak. Jason Spizak. Okay. He many people love him in the Green Lantern animated series. He was Razor in that. He's people love him in Young Justice. He's Wally West in Young Justice. The Kid Flash. He's a great voice actor. Terrible pick for the Joker. I don't know if it was the voice director or what happened. Nothing against Jason Spizak personally. Worst. I mean, I know some people will say, "What about the one from the '60s? Filmation car." Okay, probably him too. But
yeah. I think, to be fair, that's probably the worst.
Fine, you know what I mean? Like the worst recent Joker. All right, the worst recent voice of the Joker I've ever.
Yeah.
It just, at least, I don't know if it's just me. I in the trailer, it made me worried seeing it in that scene. Because, that's a really good scene, too. He almost kills the Joker, and Gordon has to stop him from killing the Joker. I love that scene. And they and even in the book already, I never liked the way the Joker looked in that panel, because his face looked all weird and everything. And here it's like, well, the face is better, but the voice is terrible. So we killed the scene yet again. So it's like, oh, darn it. Anywho, so again, I'd place it above Reign of the Superman, but I don't know if I'd put it on par or below Death of Superman. It's no Suicide Squad, but it's kind of like it's in between the Superman movies. You know what I mean? So it's not bad. I guess I'd recommend it, but not as highly as Suicide Squad. Hell with it, All
right. Well, you know what my barometer is for if you really like a DC movie or not?
What is your barometer?
You haven't asked to do a podcast about it.
It's a pretty good
it's like that to me is like an indicator that it's just okay.
Well, another thing too is that they've been kind of another indicator for why usually we do commentary podcasts on the DC ones, and this one had commentary on it. So it was
right.
Bear in mind, we did do Gotham by Gaslight. They've been doing commentary on it more, which I do appreciate. By the way, it's like, hey, we're doing commentary.
That's good.
Hooray!
All right. Next up is by far not just the biggest surprise of the month, but maybe of the year. Dora and the Lost City of Gold.
You got to tell me about this.
Would you believe that I consider this not just a good movie, but a great kids movie?
Watching that trailer, I never would have guessed it.
Dragon, this is a fantastically, wonderfully self-aware and loving adaptation of the source material, my friend. This movie just has so much passion behind it. And I really, first of all, the movie just kind of, it lives and breathes by Isabella Monier's performance. She is like absolutely, Dragon, you know what performance I equate her to?
What?
Amy Adams in Enchanted.
Ooh.
she's that good and that kind of like off the page of like, oh my god, it's like this really does feel like the animated character come to life. Of course, a 16-year-old version of the animated character, but still, it's like this is exactly what you imagine a 16-year-old Dora would be like.
The kind of the Christopher Robin approach.
Right. Well, I mean, more wacky than Christopher Robin, because this 16-year-old Dora has like all the quirks and eccentricities and, kind of like weird behavior that someone who grew up in the jungle would have. So, Dragon, basically, it's kind of like Christopher Robin meets Crocodile Dundee.
Wow.
And the reason I say Crocodile Dundee is because the first, and I would argue definitely the best act of this movie, is when she goes off to school and basically is in a Crocodile Dundee situation where, she's like the crazy jungle girl. But the thing about it, Dragon, much like Crocodile Dundee, is that she has a ton of self-confidence about herself in spite of being, like the weird kid. And I like that's like a very basic Nickelodeon movie message, the whole like self-confident like kid empowerment sort of thing. But I feel like it works with this character super well. This movie also has a fantastic opening sequence with Dora and Diego as kids imagining the, all the fantasy stuff in the show, like, like the backpack, like, hi, I'm a talking backpack. And that's really, really fun. It almost kind of like recaptures the opening segment for Dora the Explorer. Of course, Ava Longoria and Michael Pena play Dora's parents, and they're both really good, especially, I've heard people say, like, oh, Michael Pena is really annoying in this movie. It's like, I mean, it's basically like a kid-friendly version of Louise. It's like, what more do you want? It's, Michael Pena goes on like a 2-minute long, like, improvised impression of what dubstep sounds like. You're either going to like that kind of stuff or you don't. I personally can't stand dubstep, so I found it very entertaining myself.
Unless it's in Deadpool.
Well, or Phantasmic.
Okay, that's probably a better example for you, but sure.
And even then, I tolerate it. I don't like the dubstep version of Pink Elephants as much as I like the hard rock version of Pink Elephants. Anyways, what's a really amazing part of this movie, though, Dragon? He doesn't get enough screen time, but holy shit, Benicio del Toro is Swiper.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not. Dragon.
I gotta know. Is he an actual fox?
Yes.
And he's Benicio del Toro.
And he wears the mask and everything.
And he's Del Toro.
Yes.
The other Del Toro, you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, Dragon, it's glorious. I mean, like I said, I wish he was in more of it. I kind of equate it to like he's this movie's version of Black Manta, where he's kind of like the side villain, but he's so entertaining that you almost want a sequel with him as the main villain.
Wow. Let me ask you this. I saw this gag in the trailer. I just want to know if it's like present throughout the whole movie. Is she doing the thing where they're making fun of the whole like, it was like point and click, the old point and click of Dora, like where she stops the adventure?
I mean, it doesn't necessarily like. I mean, yeah, they do that kind of stuff throughout the movie, but I think it doesn't get repetitive. It's not just one joke. It's just like, and they explain it really well because Dora has lived her whole life in the jungle, socially isolated from everyone, and that's kind of like the workaround to why her behavior's like that. And I think that works well enough in terms of the screenplay.
So they made her a little. Well, I don't know. This is going to sound harsh. Made her a little.
No, crazy. It's crazy. She's crazy. I mean, they very. It's unabashed with that. Yeah.
Is Boots talk in her mind?
Yes, and he's voiced by a very, very memorable person.
Oh wow.
Do you want me to tell you who?
I want you to tell me who, please.
Danny Trejo.
Oh my god! It's funny. He's in one of my movies too.
Okay, Dragon, you see the appeal in this movie now. I mean,
this is a far better sell than something like Serenity. Okay. Like this to me.
Serenity, I was never trying to sell you on how good that movie was.
I'm just saying, like something you have to check. We're in Dora. Like at first glance, I think Dora is something I would never remotely consider seeing until like, oh my god, they're doing all this stuff with it. That's the basically in terms of you describing.
I will go as far as to say is this movie might be one of the best Nickelodeon movies ever, and it might even be one of the best adaptations of a cartoon to live action ever.
That's very interesting.
It's not perfect. It's not perfect. Once we get into the actual Lost City of Gold plot, it becomes very generic, like Nickelodeon action adventure, like jungle puzzles. They literally poke fun at the point at like, oh, we're doing another jungle puzzle like all these other Nickelodeon movies. We have a very, very cliche scene with quicksand that's just like, really, we do this in every fucking movie. Why are we doing this? There are a couple gross out gags. Like there's, I don't want to give it away, but there's one moment in particular. I thought it was funny with Dora, but some people I could see it kind of rubbing them the wrong way. Dragon, I will say this. After we get into the jungle, the movie basically becomes live action jungle movie. It's incredibly similar to the jungle movie, right down to the villain and the fake out with the villain, and like it's super similar to the jungle movie.
Would I be correct in assuming they're in El Dorado with the Lost City of Gold?
No, it's not El Dorado.
Interesting. Okay.
They say the Lost City of Gold like 10,000 times. It could be like a drinking game. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's not El Dorado.
That's remarkably the famous city of El Dorado, famously the Lost City of Gold. Yet it's not this Lost City of Weird.
Well, I think it's basically supposed to be like a fictional El Dorado.
Oh, fair enough.
Maybe DreamWorks owns the rights to El Dorado. Who knows?
I'm getting wistful for El Dorado. Let's move on.
Oh God. So suffice to say, Dragon, I highly recommend Dora and the Lost City of Gold when you get the chance to see it.
Oh, I'm interested.
Especially if you have nostalgia for the original show. Dragon, honestly, the only nostalgia I have for Dora really comes from the Kevin Smith monologue about Dora.
For those who are interested, it's from An Evening Harder, the sequel to the original Evening with Kevin Smith.
I love how, without giving anything away or getting too graphic with it, I love how Kevin Smith's practical way of dealing with Swiper. Just boom. Yep. Anyways,
that's kind of like my approach to Scooby-Doo. Is like, don't run away from the frick scaring it. Again, then I got my answer in Batman Brave and the Bold with Scooby-Doo. It's like, yeah, just punch him.
All right, so moving on. I have no idea what the hell this movie is.
Yeah, this was me trying to fill some stuff out here. So this is Otherhood. So Otherhood, it's solid enough premise. Basically, it's this is a movie that really should have been released on Mother's Day. It's basically a very mother-reliant movie. The gag and the sell and the title of the movie kind of like, oh, it's a little clever in the premise is the fact that it's basically mothers with empty nest syndrome, where it's like years have gone by. And their sons have grown up, and basically, the cell line of the whole piece is like, we're not mothers anymore. This isn't motherhood. This is other. Well, I don't think they're that like this is otherhood. I don't know. Like they kind of phrase it like that, but it's on the nose you should get, I suppose. Point being, it's like it's kind of like I do love. I think that's an interesting premise for a movie, for what this movie is. I'm not saying for any movie, but for what this kind of like. It's basically supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be kind of a feel good movie. I do enjoy me some feel good movies. I do.
Oh, we'll talk about a feel good movie, my friend. We'll get to a feel good movie.
So let me say, I love all these movies, but I do many a time love the work of Nancy Meyers. I do. My favorite Nancy Meyers movie easily, and this is not a Nancy Meyers. I want to make it clear, this is not a Nancy Meyers movie. Otherwise, I'd be much more glowing about it. The Intern is my favorite Nancy Meyers movie. Oh my God, The Intern.
I need to see that still. I do.
You do, man. Especially after the Joker, because De Niro's in that. You guys see the most pleasant.
Well, I mean, and the King of Comedy as well.
I'm just seriously. Oh my God, The Intern's the most pleasantries on. Oh God, like pleasantries.
Wait, were you about to just say pleasantries on ice?
No, not on ice. That wouldn't make any sense.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Why would it? Do you want pleasantries on ice?
It sounded like you were about to say pleasantries on ice, Dragon. I'm sorry.
You want a cold glass of pleasantries, Tiki? We can go somewhere.
I think Nick Ford would offer a cold glass of pleasantries.
Yeah,
He couldn't even bother to get Dylan a glass of water. All right, we're going down a rabbit hole here.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. All right.
Okay, the point being, Nancy Myers, like she's done like kind of these feel like she did. It's complicated, basically some feel good, usually relationship movies, but they're not always the case. It just basically kind of like feel, hey, this is like kind of a pleasant movie. And I've seen that kind of movie done well, and this is kind of in the vein of that, but I don't think it hits the mark. Where it feels like a big missed opportunity. Where again, the premise being otherhood is like mother. It's when you leave the nest and just the mother being taken out of otherhood when they're kind of trying to reunite with their grown up kids in the city. They all go to I believe they're all in New York. I forget. The point is they're all in one place. They're either Chicago or New York. I can't recall. It's been a while. I watched this towards the start of the month. Regardless, it's not that memorable either. Because here's my problem with it. We had a really great cast. We got a great cast. We had Angela Bassett, Black Panther's mom's in this, man. We have Angela Bassett. We have Patricia.
That is not the most. I'm sorry, that is not the biggest credit that Angela Bassett has to her name.
I know, but it's a mother and it's cool. I don't know.
All right, I'm sorry. You're just
for the kids. I don't know, for the kids out there.
For the kids, yes. Anyways, Black Panther's mom.
Regardless.
That's like.
She was good in the first movie.
Down Kurt Russell into being like, yeah, Kurt Russell, he's Star-Lord's dad.
That's a good role though. Regardless, you have Angela Bassett, you have Patricia Arquette, that's some solid, she's good, and Felicity Huffman, maybe not so good. Regardless,
I usually like Felicity Huffman. So.
I mean, yeah, ordinarily, but this movie not so much.
Okay,
she's the problem mom of the group.
Ooh, all right.
Regardless, the problem is like we get really conventional in a lot of places, and it's like, oh god, really, we're doing these kinds of jokes, where it's like, well, guys, we've already can't you be like Nancy Myers, please? Like Nancy Myers never falls for this. I know it's like that's really unfair to the filmmaker. I'm sure she had a really good time making the movie, but I don't know what to tell you. It's just I know with this sort of movie they could have done better. I've seen this movie done so many times so much better. I've seen Albert Brooks make this movie so much better. I don't like come on. Anyway, well, he didn't make that movie. He was in that movie. You know what I mean? Regardless, Otherhood was kind of a letdown. I was like, yeah, it was okay. I mean, it was okay. It wasn't the most offensive thing I've ever seen. It was like, yeah, I know for a fact it could have been better.
Mm.
All right, moving on.
All right. Good Boys.
So we go from The Boys to Good Boys. Are they? But oddly enough, they could be pair them together. It's like, isn't it kind of a universe where it could be The Good Boys, given how kind of raunchy this one is?
Oh God, yes.
Well, what was the butcher like when he was a boy? Maybe something like that.
All right, Dragon. I was not. This is one where I feel like this could have. I feel like this movie could have been so much more than it is. I feel like the idea of an adolescent coming of age R-rated comedy is a good idea, and not just from a live action South Park point of view, but also kind of from like a John Hughes revival point of view. Like that to me was like maybe like the the best case scenario for a movie like this. Unfortunately, this movie does not hit that best case scenario by a pretty large margin. I'm not going to say this movie was terrible. This movie does have some pretty good jokes in it, some pretty good gags. It's not the funniest movie I've ever, I've seen. It's certainly not like there's no big standout performance like there was in something like Game Night. I mean, come to think of it, Dragon, this movie has been pretty damn weak when it comes to comedy, just in general. This year, I mean.
Mm.
And the Boys is just, I'm sorry, now I'm doing it. Good Boys is Dragon. It kind of commits the cardinal sin of a movie in my eyes, which, as you know, is being mediocre. Like honestly, if this movie was worse, then I kind of feel more compelled. Like if it was just like, oh my god, like wow, they really swung for the fences with the the R-rated humor, and it really doesn't pay off. If it was like that, then at least there'd be something to talk about, Dragon. But the fact of the matter is, it's not like that. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the quote-unquote R-rated humor is, frankly, pretty tame. I mean, this is definitely, like, not the most raunchy R-rated. I mean, of course, it's not going to be the most R because it's kids, so obviously you can't get away with some stuff. But, but still, I don't feel like they went hard enough with the premise. They tried to have heartfelt arcs and moments in there, but it just kind of felt forced. It was like, it kind of felt like the movie was forcing itself to have an arc. And I just, at the end of the day, I just kind of left very unsatisfied with it. Like I said, Jacob Tremblay is a very, very solid young actor. And honestly, I just kind of wanted to punch his character in the face for most of the movie.
I've been there with kids a lot of the time.
Because honestly, Dragon, like, seriously, like, just to rant on this kid a little bit, like, his whole character, and he's like the main character of the movie, but the whole arc of his character is like trying to get with this girl at the expense of his friendship with the other two. With like the other two quote unquote good boys. And basically, like, throughout the movie, he's being a dick to his best friends to get with this girl. And of course, by the end of the movie, the message is like, like friends first and all that, and we should embrace the time we have together before we grow apart. Pretty standard coming of age type stuff. But man, I tell you, they don't do Jacob Tremblay's character any favors with making him likable before we get to that third act revelation.
What's Tremblay been in? Because his name's very familiar to me.
Room.
Right. Oh, yeah. He's really. That kid's a good actor. But you mean?
That's what I'm saying. He is, but he's just. This was not the. In Dragon, that's what I'm saying. Like, I was excited for this movie, for him specifically, because I thought it would be a really good opportunity for him to like kind of like diversify his career beyond just like the kid from Room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I feel like this movie might have kind of like a negative effect on his career just because he's so unlikable in it.
Yeah, that's a shame.
It's not his fault. It's just the movie's fault. It's the script's fault. So yeah, suffice to say, Good Boys, I saw potential in the premise for sure. And Dragon, I tell you, like I said, I have been kind of craving a really good comedy this year, and I haven't seen The Long Shot yet. Maybe The Long Shot is that really good comedy. I
find it very funny. I'm not sure if everyone will, but I think it's funny, and I really think it's enjoyable.
I mean, that might be the best comedy of the year that I haven't seen yet.
I think it's the smartest comedy I've seen this year.
I do very much like Seth Rogen movies, kind of like his in a candy bar for the brain sort of way. Neighbors 2 was actually my favorite comedy the year that came out. I feel not enough people talk about Neighbors 2. I thought that one was a lot better. I thought Neighbors 2 was a lot funnier than the
Let's
original.
get Katie Garland on the line. She'll speak highly of Neighbors 2.
Hell yeah. Anyways, so yeah, suffice to say, Dragon, Good Boys, I saw the potential in the premise, but it does not live up to its title.
Before we go any further, I have a question to you. Of all the memes that you've courted in your time, have you ever courted the SpongeBob meme of just Squidward saying, mediocre?
It sounds like something I would quote, but no, I can't say that I have.
Interesting.
I might have to start, though.
Anyway, okay. So here's something that is not mediocre at all.
Yeah, God. Folks, if I wasn't saving up for a trip and I actually had the $6 to spare, I would have watched this for sure.
Yeah, trust me. This would be worth every penny. This is, oh god, to me, this is my favorite thing of August.
Well, Dragon, I'm sorry. I need to save up for my fucking $15 sugar cocktails at Galaxy's Edge, all right?
I don't blame you, but you've been resourceful in the past. There's no excuse why you couldn't have found this. Anywho, Madness in the Method. Oh my goodness. Okay, so Madness in the Method was Jason Mewes' directorial debut. Of course, Jason Mewes of Jay and Silent Bob fame, Kevin Smith's right-hand man, kind of the proverbial son that he never had, as well as his best buddy in the whole world. Jason Mewes directed a movie, and I assumed he's kind of been ushered into the directing. I think the Jay and Silent Bob Super Groovy cartoon movie, which he did not direct, but I think he was kind of getting closer and closer into the director's chair, and he finally. This is completely out of left field, too, because something I didn't mention really in the news, that Kevin Smith's birthday was this month, August 2nd, and this was released on his birthday, coincidentally. And this movie just blew me away. Oh, my God. It's just... There's a great meta context to this, where one of my favorite all-time kind of series of podcasts in regards to Smodcast and all the podcasts Kevin Smith's done is the first 6-episode arc of Jay and Silent Bob Get Old. Where basically we have it told to us the story of Jason Mewes' rise and fall of drug addiction, and it's a riveting tale. And this is like the perfect companion piece to that, where you kind of have Jason Mewes, where we're at now, the sober sober actor Jason Mewes. Jason Mewes is kind of breaking away from Kevin Smith, and he's basically it's kind of it's such a true to life reflection at its core that then gets really farcical in the best of ways. We have a reflection of basically Mewes being typecasted and also being kind of permanently attached to Kevin Smith and trying to break away from that again as he's directing this. Let me put it this way: he's not directing this movie within the movie. I'm saying it's very coincidental that he's directing this movie. And it's a very honest portrayal about his life that we've kind of had told to us before. We're kind of seeing, like, I wonder what Mewes' response to all this is. What would Mewes think about this? And it's kind of believable. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's got a great cast. It's very funny. Vinnie Jones is my favorite cast member in this whole
Oh my
thing.
god, that's definitely reason to see it for sure.
The idea is that Vinnie Jones, if I remember correctly,
Dragon, I'm sorry, it's not my fault that Galaxy's Edge cocktails are so expensive.
So Vinnie Jones, of course, we love Vinnie Jones, especially from Gallivant. Vinnie Jones.
That's all thing.
Vinnie Jones, the way they worked him in here was so perfect, Tiki. Vinnie Jones, essentially, if I recall it, that he was also in recovery as well as Jason Mewes. They're both basically they kind of knew each other through recovery. I doubt that's in real life, but I'm just saying the point being, Vinnie Jones. Again, it's such a meta kind of it's a farce, but again, starts from a real meta place where Vinnie Jones, he went from a soccer player to an actor, and again, he kind of made a break from it, like Jay did. And also, again, there's a bit of there was some rumors and kind of Hollywood had an opinion about Vinnie Jones at the start of things. We kind of make fun of that here. Point being, he befriends Vinnie Jones, and then we have a great status quo setup here. So again, it's like all based in reality, but then again, like kind of a little hyper realizing, kind of like it's like the heightened version of Jason Mewes' life by the Just Giglet standards,
Yeah.
Other great casters like Gina Carano plays Jay's wife instead of again, we have actors in the movie. We don't just have every real life person in there. We have Gina Carano, of course, Angel Dust from Deadpool. She's wonderful in it. Dean Cain has an appearance. And notably, this is Stan Lee's last cameo on film. Last live action cameo you're ever going to see is Stan Lee's role in this movie. It's a nice one too. It's maybe it's not a Marvel cameo, but it's a solid one. Of course, it's kind of closing the loop because if you recall, Stan Lee's first his first major cameo, the first scene that he ever got was Mallrats. Mallrats was the first real cameo.
I'm sorry, I don't know why why I keep crashing. Do you want me to restart just to see if it stops happening? Because this is it's becoming consistent.
All right, sure.
All right, you can keep going on this for a couple minutes, I assume.
Yeah,
right?
sure, yeah.
Okay, I'll be right back.
All right, so folks, so essentially, this is it's very much kind of it's not a rise and fall story in regards to addiction, but it's a rise because again, that would just be okay. Why we just there wouldn't be much comedy. That wouldn't be much like Jason Mewes. He's relapse. It's not at all about that because again, one that would probably diminish. It'd be a little diminishing. But what we do here is Jay wants to be an actor. He wants to kind of redefine himself because again, he's always been joined at the hip with Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith's been kind of a symbol of kind of the recovery and everything with Jay, as well as kind of the highlights, just kind of like the connection that he has to Jersey, being a Jersey boy and everything. And what happens is Jay he learns the dangers of going method, kind of the Jared Leto of it all, if you will, not to the extremes of Jared Leto. We're basically going to alienate everybody in the cast and so on and so forth. But at the very least, it's Jared. It's kind of Jared Leto in that it's an all-consuming thing. Basically, he rents this book that is learning the method acting method, essentially, and basically he reads it and becomes all-consuming. Kind of it takes him to a dark place, let's say, or basically he's becoming method to hopefully get the roles that he wants, so we can kind of break off and do his own thing, kind of be respected as an actor. And again, for all we know, maybe Jason Mewes really does want that deep down. Again, he went as far as to direct his own movie. So again, there are layers of truth within this, which are very interesting. So basically, through the course of the movie, it's kind of a dark comedy. It's almost like, believe it or not, it's kind of a crime noir to an extent. Where basically, Jay does something really bad, and basically, it's almost kind of a psychodrama, like a noir psychodrama. Like, oh god, now look what mess Jay's gotten into now. It's like again, you're knowing Jay, especially if you're a Kevin Smith fan, if you're a View Askewverse fan, if you know this guy, I think you're going to fully get a kick out of this movie. If not, again, it's still just kind of an interesting. Yeah, it was kind of this innocent guy. We're not just playing Jason Mewes for laughs at the very start. Like we're not just like he is funny in the movie. The movie does have comedy, but there's a lot of dark comedy in the movie. Where again, it's like this does feel like a solid introduction to Jason Mewes. If you didn't know about the guy, just kind of more looking at the latter, like the recovered Jason Mewes versus like, hey, you know him for being Jay from Jay and Silent Bob, the druggie, and of course if you know the negative stuff about Jason Mewes, all that's kind of factored in there. But yeah, it's all the, it's really interesting. Again, so much deeper than I ever thought it would go, really, and that's what really impresses me about it. Again, name off a few other stars. I mean, of course, Terry Hatcher's in this. Basically, a lot of the people that it very much feels like something Kevin Smith is kind of worked in tandem with Jason Mewes for. I mean, Jason Mewes is kind of the shot caller on this by all means, and they shot this in London, if you can believe it. They shot this overseas. And of course, the hilarious thing is that it's set in L.A. where they live. Yet, of course, they couldn't shoot there. It was just kind of funny the way that worked out. Anyway, it's like he has an agent. The agent is played by Terry Hatcher. You have, again, a lot of celebrity. I can't as mentioned with Dean Cain for kind of playing off. Again, people who have appeared on Comic Book Men and Kevin Smith working on Supergirl, doing all this sort of stuff. So it's really fun the way that turns out. And again, there's a bit of definitely sort of a kind of a psychodrama. Like, will Jay do the right thing, or is he going to get in deeper? And it kind of gets in deeper and deeper as it goes on. And I guess suffice it to say, this is absolutely the movie that I'm going to be judging Jay and Silent Bob Reboot against, in part, because I can't fully say, if it doesn't measure up to this movie, Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, because Jay and Silent Bob Reboot's going to be a big nostalgia fest. This is kind of a deeper thing. I mean, they're both kind of on the same par. Like, this is how you kind of flirt with kind of where Kevin Smith's gone in his career and you work it into a movie, but we could do it in kind of, again, this is Jay's version of that movie, and we're going to see Kevin's version of that movie with Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. But again, a little bit more fun nostalgic affair with that than the other. So that's what it is.
Okay, so moving right along, then let's get to Dragon. I'm going to switch the order on these two just because I'm going to build to the best of the month, if you don't mind.
All right.
So let's start with Ready or Not. Which, Dragon, do you know anything about Ready or Not?
No.
Okay, basically the basic premise is that it's so essentially this young woman is marrying into a very, very rich elite family, and they're a family of game makers. Dragon, they made their legacy making games, right? Like board games and checkers and stuff.
Well, sorry about that, folks. A little technical hiccup there. But yeah, board games. I know it just sounds like an unrelated thing, but it's nice that board games are coming back in vogue in some way, shape, or form. Anyway, yes, go on.
Old. I'm so sorry about this. I don't know what's wrong. I haven't had this sort of problem with StreamYard like in all the time we've been using it. I don't know if it's like my connection or what, but just yeah, Dragon. If that happens again, just jump to I don't know. I mean, if it happens again, I'll be back soon.
Sure. Okay. Board games, go.
Right. So this family, like, they made their fortune, like, producing board games and stuff. That's all you need to know about that. Anyway, so essentially they have a tradition where every time someone marries into the family, it's kind of complex, but they draw, it's like a randomized, like they play a game. Now, Dragon, it could be as simple as like playing a game of checkers. But if someone draws the wrong card, the 1 in 100 chance, then oh boy, all hell is going to break loose, and that card is hide and seek. Now, Dragon, that hide and seek card, not only do we play hide and seek, but it's a deadly game of hide and seek, and all the family have to kill the the person who's hiding, and it's ridiculous. And there's like a silly curse on the family if they don't play this game. And Dragon, it's fucking out there, man. This is not your type of movie at all right? I don't even know why I'm trying to explain it so hard to you. It's bonkers, man. This is a bananas movie. It's got an old lady wielding just a crazy over the top axe. A lot of the fun of it comes from just like these bumbling rich idiots carrying around like these old school like 18th century weapons like axes and crossbows and muskets and having no idea how to use them. There's also some fun family dynamics with the people who marry in. Like there's several people who just don't want to be there. But they all have to participate because they all believe in this curse and they all believe that if they don't kill the bride, then they're going to die, just because of this weird, like 1 in 100 chance that they draw hide and seek. I don't know what that's about, Dragon. I'd honestly like the premise a lot more if it was just like, okay, they have to play hide and seek, and if she can stay alive until dawn, then can become a part of the family. I don't like this whole like random draw, and it could just be an innocent game, or it could be a fight for your life. You know what I mean? That doesn't sit well with me. But I will admit, this movie is a good time. I had fun with it. The lead actress, I'm terribly sorry I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she honestly kicked ass, Dragon. This was like very much a Sarah Connor or a Laurie Strode style like kick-ass female protagonist, because once she realized what was going on, she got into like ass-kicking self-preservation mode and didn't let go. And I mean, this woman gets put through hell, but much like a Sarah Connor or an Ellen Ripley, she really comes out the other side. And she's wearing this wedding dress the whole time, so she's got this very distinctive look. And the wedding dress just gets more and more dirty and beat down as all these things are happening to her, and she goes to great lengths to hide and stay away from these crazy rich fucks. So ultimately, it's a good time, Dragon. It's pretty much ultimately the definitive B movie of the month. And I had fun with it. I'm not going to remember it in a couple months from now. I maybe won't even remember it in a couple weeks from now. But for what it's worth, it was a fun kind of like, B movie Saturday night out at the movie theater. All right, so Dragon, you mentioned Feel Good earlier.
Yes.
Peanut Butter Falcon might be the feel-good movie of the decade.
Okay, let me ask you this: is it a movie that culminates in in Sam Wilson having like a spoonful of peanut butter, and then the James Buchanan Barnes has
Okay, it doesn't. It doesn't.
As like some chocolate, and they beat each other to become friends.
Oh, God.
Hey, you got chocolate in my peanut butter. You got peanut butter in my chocolate. We should be buddies. Okay, no.
All right. So I'll say this much up front. This movie stars Shia LaBeouf. I've always been a big defender of Shia LaBeouf. I've always seen the potential in Shia LaBeouf. Personally, I think Shia LaBeouf would make an amazing Joker, but that's a different conversation.
It's a very different conversation.
Yes. Now, Shia LaBeouf, this is easily his best role ever, and this very much lives up to all the potential I've ever seen of him. So the basic premise of this movie, Dragon, is that Shia LaBeouf is a man on the run, and the character of Zach, who's played by an actual Down syndrome person who's also named Zach, so he's basically playing himself. The character of Zach escapes from a live-in home. He's basically trapped in a retirement home because they have no other place for him because his parents abandoned him. And he escapes there because he wants to become a wrestler. And he has this videotape that he plays over and over again, where it's basically a training video of the saltwater redneck, played, I might say, delightfully, Dragon, by Thomas Hayden Church.
Huh.
And so basically Zach loves the saltwater redneck, and there's a training camp. There's a training camp in Florida that Zach desperately wants to get to. And so that's why he breaks out of the facility. And so, of course, they cross paths along the way. And there's two different factions coming after Zach. One is coming after Zach. One is coming after the Shia LaBeouf character, Tyler. The character coming after Tyler is played by John Hawkes, and he does a really good role, Dragon. He's very intimidating. But I will admit, probably the weakest part of this movie is explaining what exactly Shia LaBeouf is in trouble for. They don't really do a decent job of setting it up. It's just kind of like, once he's on the run, and you can accept the premise. But I felt like it was a little sloppy, like summing up exactly what he was on the run for. Anyways, my point is, Shia LaBeouf meets up with this Down syndrome kid, and Dragon. What ensues is easily the feel good movie of the year, perhaps one of the feel good movies of the decade. I don't want to get too personal with this, but anyone who knows me on a personal level knows that I have a brother with severe autism. He's nonverbal. And Dragon, this movie teaches the lesson about disabled people that I wish that every fucking movie about disabled people would teach. And this is something that I had to go through myself with my brother, and this is honestly probably why I'm more close with my brother than my brother is with anyone else in my family. And that's that you don't treat disabled people like they are children. You treat them their own age. You treat them as individuals. That's what Shia LaBeouf does with Zach. And Dragon, I gotta tell you, seeing that unfold is fucking beautiful and delightful and inspirational. And it's an easy feel-good movie for sure. And I'm not going to say it's the best movie of the year. It might be, I would say it's maybe in the fringes of my top 5. It's maybe like either right in my number 5 or maybe right outside of my top 5. Like stuff like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and The Art of Self-Defense are definitely a notch above it, just because of, like I said, this movie does have some storytelling problems in the script. But Dragon, just in terms of like that message that I really fucking appreciate of like, treating the disabled like your equals, and how that can just mutually benefit, be of mutual benefit to you, and how disabled people are equals with their own hopes and dreams and aspirations, and they aren't just a condition. It's a fucking beautiful movie. It really is. And Thomas Hayden Church as the saltwater redneck, I don't want to give anything away about the plot, but I will say that he's just, I love the brief time that he does have on screen. Honestly, I would nominate like everyone in this movie for an Oscar. I would nominate Shia LaBeouf. I would honestly nominate Zach Dragon, because he is just charming as hell. This real life Down syndrome kid can just make the wittiest comebacks, and just it is so delightful. And Thomas Hayden Church, like I said, this might be his best role since Sideways. It really might be. So yeah, this was definitely the thing that came along that kind of like at the very tail end of August, kind of single-handedly saved August for me. I mean, Dora was going to be my best movie of August before this, and that would have been fine because Dora is a very good movie, but Dora is a product. This is not a product. This is a movie, and I highly recommend it if you can find it.
All right.
All right, so shit. Now we have to do some catch up, Dragon. What's the first catch up movie we're talking about? I haven't typed out any of it yet.
I just want to make sure if it's me. Well, it's. Yes. It's for me. It's Red Sea Diving Resort.
Okay, Dragon. As you're doing this, I'm gonna mute my microphone so I can type out all the catch up stuff. Okay, just so you know.
Yes. All right.
All right, go for it.
All right. So Red Sea Diving Resort is a movie that I very much I tried as much as I could, folks. We were obviously having some technical things at the end of last month outside of our purview, so unfortunately I couldn't get Red Sea Diving Resort. It was basically a Netflix movie that was released. I want to get it at the tail end of. So it came out the 31st. It came out the 31st of. Came out 31st of July, and basically we had to do memoirs, before the month's end. Unfortunately, we can't do it like we usually like we're doing now, which is kind of basically at the start of the month that follows. So that one fell through the cracks. But now I finally saw it. So I just wanted to give it its proper due. Red Sea Diving Resort. It's a biopic thriller about this operation to evacuate and rescue Ethiopian refugees, Jewish Ethiopian refugees to be more specific. It's about, I believe, I forget when exactly it's set. I want to say it's it's in the 80s. Might be late 70s, early to mid 80s. It's basically interesting. Basically, this is the kind of more. This is going to be a terrible comparison. It's kind of like the summer vacation version of Argo, and it's delightful. Well, I shouldn't look. I can't say delightful because there's some horrible stuff in this movie. I mean, horrible in the sense of, well, oh man, just the when you think humanity can't get any worse, man. But again, it's history, so it happened. I don't mean to downplay it like that, but that's the fact of the matter. Look, out of so basically, this is out of the whole the Israel conflict. Again, very much kind of in the Argo sense, where again, very much it's kind of like around, kind of in the fallout of that time, where it was kind of a big deal going on there, and it's. And basically the cover is this, they took this abandoned hotel, this abandoned resort, basically as their covers. They have Chris Evans. Chris Evans is in this movie, folks. Yay. Chris Evans and company, they play these, essentially these Israeli, essentially these Israeli agents where they're trying to save the Ethiopians. They're trying to save the refugees, and basically they build this facade again, kind of like how in Argo the movie was the facade. We're building a facade, and basically we're going to use this like, hey, we're just inviting it for the masses. And basically, when night falls, we transfer the refugees who are in like a neighboring town, and we basically ship them off to kind of our assets, like basically Ben Kingsley and company overseas. Like they have like boats at the ready, so basically we use our boats that we use to help people like dive underneath the water and everything. And we're going to use those boats. We're going to like basically ship them out there so they're saved by the soldiers and everything, and they get out of there and no one's the wiser. That's the idea. That's pretty much what they do. And it's a very risky thing. And the idea is they got away with it. They keep doing it time and time again. Each time it gets riskier and riskier. And Chris Chalk, some may recall, any Gotham fans out there, Lucius Fox from Gotham, he plays a great villain in this. He's so scary. He just plays a cruel man. And he's essentially the colonel who's basically, he's very much the idea being every refugee that they have, they keep in around here, around the location that they're at. Every refugee that they keep is money in their pocket because they get basically money to, you have refugee camps, right? Hey, you get money because you have all these refugees. And of course, if they liberate the refugees, they get them out of Dodge. That's less money in their pocket. And essentially, it's a very greedy kind of time over there. So Michael K. Williams, he plays essentially the guy who kind of leads the Ethiopia. He basically is working with Chris Evans. He gets the Ethiopians he helps transfer. He's like the leader of the bunch over there. And you get a lot of Greg Kinnear's in it. Greg Kinnear kind of plays the kind of the associate that kind of basically he facilitates Ben King. He kind of facilitates the operation. Ben Kingsley's the boss, and he's the guy who's kind of in charge of kind of the rescue relief of. I'm sorry, forgive me if I'm a little dodgy on the specifics here, folks. It's been a while, and again, it's kind of like the end of last month, so it's forgive me. Point being, I would recommend this if you're in for a thriller. I hate the critics who are just saying it's a white savior movie because what happened? What more do you want? It's what happened in history. It's like the point being, like, what I love about this movie is it's the fact that it's Chris Evans does help elevate it even more. So I just love the fact that it's people saving
fucking
other people.
White savior, that's ridiculous.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, yes, they were white, but that's what happened. What do you want? They showed the footage at the end. The footage of like the saving refugees. Like, that's what happened.
That's what our fucking. Oh, I'm sorry, Dragon. I'm sorry, but if you're that, just to loop this back around, that shit right there. That's exactly what Dave Chappelle was talking about in his special. All right, I don't mean to make a point of this, but that's exactly the kind of shit that Dave Chappelle highlights in his special. It is ridiculous that our culture has come to the point where white people aren't allowed to save other people. What is this? What is this?
Just let Captain America save people. Come on.
I feel like I'm getting in trouble for saying this, Dragon.
No, but all seriousness, again, what I get simply however you feel about that, critics out there, because that's what the critics are saying.
Oh, that's just Jesus Christ. I don't like to get political on this channel.
Okay, but getting back to just what at its core is, it basically is kind of it's kind of a more summer vacation-y version of Argo, but I like it though. I love that we save droves and droves of people, and it's like we're saving people. That's cool. Again, I'm easy to please because I live for that sort of thing. We kind of save people,
and of course it is Chris Evans. I'm sure
that was the benefit. That was a bonus. But even the movie as it is, I mean, that was kind of definitely a hook. Let me play this. One last thing I'll say about it. It was not remotely the movie. I had no idea this was a biopic. I know it was not remotely what I expected. I expected an action movie with Chris Evans that involved diving. That's all I expected.
God.
And I'll admit, I was stupid. I thought it was like skydiving. I had no idea. It was felt stupid.
Oh God.
I swear, guys, it was not remotely what I thought it was going to be, but it was far better than I thought it was going to be.
All right.
All right.
Okay, next up, probably one of the ones that you've wanted me to see the most all year since we started doing this.
Oh yes, easily, yes.
Oh man, Chaplin. Dragon, out of 10, what would you rank this?
Well, I mean, look.
I'm just going to compare our opinions on it.
Well, look, Chaplin. Okay, I'm just with the number, I guess. I mean, look, I feel like a 10. If I'm being actually truthful, I mean, I'll probably like an 8. It's probably an 8, but I feel like a 10.
Okay, I think we're on the same page with it then. That's good.
I personally love. It's like one of my. I can't say it's
you
the best.
You admit that this is pretty. It's by the numbers, but it's not by the numbers at the same time. It's interesting to put my finger on. Let's get the obvious out of the way first. Robert Downey Jr. Just holy shit. I mean, oh my God.
Yes. Oh God, he should have got an Oscar for this movie. I forget if
I can't believe he didn't.
I forget if he got nominated or not. All I know is he didn't get it.
Do you know if the makeup got nominated or got anything?
That's the thing. I'm sure. Basically, I want to Tiki. I don't know for a fact. I want to say the makeup was nominated, but I forget if it was nominated. He was also nominated, or if he wasn't nominated at all, the makeup was nominated.
Oh, if he wasn't nominated at all, that would be ridiculous, Dragon. Total transformation.
I think it is possible. It's possible that he did. That he may not have gotten nominated. I'm not sure.
All right, but regardless, Dragon, it's not the performance is freaking awesome for sure. My problem with this movie is that I feel like it maybe went a little bit too ambitious with the framing device. I like the framing device with the old man Chaplin, but what I didn't really like was here's the thing, Dragon. I feel like some of my favorite biopics of all time cover a small portion of a much larger life. You know, we see that with stuff like The Social Network. I'm not saying this is one of my favorites of all time, but it's up there, you know, something like The Founder, which The Founder covered some years, but, you know, it's just, it didn't cover the whole history of McDonald's. You know, it covered the accusation of McDonald's. You see what I'm getting at? Whereas this movie, honestly, I feel like any one of the number of things this movie covers, like specifically Chaplin's transition from you know, his rough transition from silent film to sound, I feel like that's the movie they should have focused on. And instead, we get just kind of like a best of Chaplin, sort of like very generic. I don't like how much time is devoted to each one of his wives. Like, I know that just feels like a very like 90s thing to do. Like, well, we got to have the love interest. Like, I'm sure that they were instrumental in his life, I guess, but I don't know, man. This movie wasn't necessarily what I thought it was going to be. I liked it for sure, Dragon. I'm glad I watched it. And don't get me wrong. And like I said, I think in terms of the actual score, I think you and I both land on an 8 out of 10. I just, I didn't love this. It didn't necessarily blow me out of the water. The performance blew me out of the water. The movie itself, not so much. The movie itself was good. It was solid. I don't want to consider it like a great piece of storytelling from a biopic point of view.
One of your boys directed.
Is that fair?
One of your boys directed this. It was Edinburgh.
My boys. Yeah.
But yeah, look, here's the thing with Chaplin. So a lot of people, Chaplin is my go-to example when people are really harsh on biopics. I'm not saying you are. I'm saying generally. Here's the thing. Chaplin for me is kind of a building block of biopics in that it's the straightforward biopic in terms of if you're going to do the whole life, that's a pretty good way of doing the whole life, I feel. Now, it's also an example of, yes, they are being a little cinematic in places, and I say cinematic, I don't mean like we have action. I don't mean that. What I mean is there are elements of, I never felt the need to look into this because I'm so satisfied with what we we see Charlie Chaplin's childhood, and of course we parallel the movies. Now, of course, it's the question of, are we paralleling the movies just like give for the Chaplin fans that they're like, hey, you remember those scenes in the movies? We get to see where he maybe got the genesis from, the genesis of the idea from. Now again, like I don't feel compelled to look into that. See, I don't know how much of that's on the money, because again, I feel it was so, it got you where you learned, okay, at least as far as the movie's concerned, Charlie Chaplin as a kid, he's running away from the workhouse. It's very much how like the kid is running away, from the essentially the same thing in one of his most famous movies, The Kid. That whole movie is about Charlie Chaplin kind of becoming a father in that that movie. The point is the kid's really good.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is like we have like little things like we meet like the young Charlie Chaplin, the flashbacks had like, oh, he knew a blind girl. And that's why there's like a blind girl in the Tramp shorts, the Tramp films, that sort of stuff. It's kind of like that's biopic fodder. Sure, do I know if it's factual or not? I personally don't know, but again, it kind of sold me on it, so I don't really care. And that's what I'm saying. Like they took liberties. I'm sure. Like for example, the two biggest liberties I can name off the top of my head that I know for 100% are liberties, because they tell you in the credits. Which, by the way, this to me is the ultimate like biopic credits. By the way, this is the ultimate use of biopic credits. Like the text on the screen. Like, oh my god! Well, not only that, we have like a little bit of footage. It shows you like the where they went off. It has like the music, the wonderful score, the John Barry score playing behind it, which is sublime. And the score and the music in this movie is really good. You got to admit that, right?
Oh yeah.
I guess what I'm getting, like, for example, the framing device with Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins, basically, he's a fictional character, and he's created just to give, like, okay, he's writing a book, and where it's actually an autobiography. So he wrote himself versus, like, okay, we have a guy who's kind of giving him someone to talk to. That's fine. I'll excuse that. No problem. James Woods' character, he's created for the movie, where basically he was wronged by the legal system, but it wasn't like necessarily one specific. We can't say it was a James Woody lawyer, but let's just make it James Woods. Let's make it cool. No problem there. I mean, those are the liberties that don't bother me. That I think people are harping on. I think on the whole, it's like they like. I think it's like a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. That doesn't feel just, does it?
No, God, no. I would have thought this movie would at least be in the 80s. Wow.
That's what I'm saying. And people again, they're really harsh. That's why it's my go-to.
That's what I'm saying, Dragon. Like solid 8 out of 10. You know what I mean?
Where it's like
it's not perfect, but
the two things people say most about biopics are that it's factually inaccurate or it's too sentimental or too favoring the subject. And I feel like you didn't feel that when you were watching this, were you?
Well, I don't. As far as the factual accuracy goes, I can't really speak too much about that because my favorite biopic of all time, The Social Network, is really not like it. Kind of like Mark Zuckerberg had a girlfriend when he invented Facebook. You know what I mean? It's like the core foundation of that whole movie is false, but I still think it's a fantastic fucking movie. So I can't really speak too much about that. I really don't care. As far as the overly sentimental, yeah, I did feel that a little bit, if I'm being honest.
But did it kind of wreck the enjoyment of it all?
It didn't wreck the enjoyment, but I will be honest, it kind of felt like it kind of had like a little bit of like, how I don't really like Forrest Gump?
Yeah.
It kind of had that going a little bit, like that really like that 90s like super cheeseball corniness. I don't know.
Okay, well, look, agree to disagree, it's fine. It's just like, like stuff like Kevin Kline is Doug Fairbanks. I love that friendship. I love him, being friends with, essentially the original Zorro and like the Hollywood pedigree. That's the sort of stuff I live for. And it's just like one of my personal go-to biopics. Like, I don't know if it's like my all-time favorite, because again, we did a list way back when. It's probably, we're going to have to amend one of these days, by the way. It's like to add all the other biopics that have come out since then. Mm-hmm. Sure, but look, regardless, it's like, I think there's a lot of really great stuff with Chaplin. Of course, like when he's on the train, the whole like he has to smile for the crowd, and like that whole thing, playing "Smile" underneath it all, which of course is a Chaplin song, which is kind of half the reason you watched it, the whole Joker tie. But
sure.
Point is, Chaplin, so
yeah. So let's get to the king of comedy, Dragon. I'm going to be honest with you. I have no idea why I haven't seen this movie before. Martin Scorsese is a filmmaker where I haven't seen all of his films. I've seen most of the big ones. Dragon, sometimes with filmmakers, some of my favorite movies are the most intimate ones. A big example of that is Paul Thomas Anderson. Paul Thomas Anderson has made some pretty epic movies between stuff like There Will Be Blood, Magnolia, Boogie Nights. But my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and he's one of my favorite filmmakers, is Punch Drunk Love. And I know that you're not a Punch Drunk Love fan, so just shut up. This is personal. This is personal. This is personal. All right, shut up.
Go on.
So yeah, Punch Drunk Love. The King of Comedy to me is like Punch Drunk Love is my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie. I will say that The King of Comedy for me is my favorite Scorsese movie. I mean, this thing is just like it's on fire, man. It's just like it's as entertaining and funny as it is suspenseful, and that's just a great mix. It's almost to the point where I kind of regret watching it because I feel like the Joker movie is maybe borrowing a little bit too heavily from it.
Well, especially with the De Niro of it all, obviously.
That's what I'm saying, man. That's what I'm saying. It's like it almost feels like a remake at this point. We'll see how it goes, but I mean, suffice to say, obviously, De Niro is fucking just amazing in this movie. This is just this it might be my favorite De Niro performance, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, he just is firing on all cylinders here. You feel the pity for this guy, but you also feel the ego, like the inflated sense of self-entitlement that this guy has. And then, of course, Jerry Lewis is just fucking amazing as well.
You remember, this is like Jerry Lewis's first serious role, Tiki, and he's basically playing himself, but as a talk show. Basically, he's playing himself mixed with Johnny Carson. That's essentially what he's playing.
I mean, I love how horrific that opening scene is with the car, and you know, I mean, this movie just really just fires on all cylinders. I've always been someone who it's like I like Goodfellas quite a bit, but I've always been kind of like a Godfather over Goodfellas kind of guy. I like my mobster movies a little bit more traditional than Goodfellas. But this is and that's kind of like one of the things I don't necessarily care for about Scorsese is that I feel like he kind of tackles the same sort of like, like corruptness in the criminal system maybe one too many times. I don't want to like talk, sit here and be like, oh, Martin Scorsese fucking repeats his themes.
Yeah, so why do you hate Casino, Tiki? Tell the folks.
Right. I don't want to sit here and do that, but that's one of the reasons why King of Comedy might be my favorite Scorsese movie is that it gets away from that. You know what I mean? Sure, there's an element of crime in this movie, but it's dealing with an entirely different world than most of the other Scorsese movies deal with.
It feels so much more different than what he usually does. Yeah. Of course, the ending, I love that. The ending's tremendous too, which I won't.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love the ambiguous endings, and this one is. Yeah, for sure. All right, so yeah, I mean, suffice to say, Dragon, I knew I would like this, and I was not disappointed.
Good to hear.
All right, next up.
Right. All right, so
I'm sorry, did I screw up the order?
Yeah, I think give me one second.
Oh yeah, I did. Okay, my bad. Oh, you know what I did? I did two of mine in a row. So why don't we just do two of yours in a row, and then we'll call it even.
Right. Okay. All right. Let's see. So Dragon Ball Super Broly. I'm sure I've mentioned this to you at least once during all of our time together. At least once. In my life. So I love Batman the Animated Series. Of course, you had Batman the Series and Freakazoid. And there was a time when those shows, again, it's before the bigger advent of DVD, or at least before I kind of discovered the box sets and everything. There was a large portion of my childhood where I did not have Batman the Animated Series. And I had something that filled the void. And that thing that filled the void was Dragon Ball. Which would then kind of graduate to the rest of the whole Dragon Ball series. I was the most stubborn, stupid, reluctant Dragon Ball fan. I don't know how else to put it. Like I love Dragon Ball, the original series. Big Goku as a child, the more happy-go-lucky adventure show, the martial art tournaments, and everything.
I still think that show is the one that holds up the most out of all of them, to tell you the truth.
And I still really love that. That's still probably my favorite at the end of the day. And then, of course, I was like stupid, thinking because at this time you'd have current Dragon Ball Z episodes coming on Toonami, or basically the daytime version of Toonami, the afternoon version of Toonami. I don't know, when it was beginning at 6. I forget when. Point being, Dragon Ball Z would be advertised for Toonami. And I'd be like, "Oh, I don't want anything to do with that." It's like that's like it's too easy. It's all action and fighty. I want the adventure, man. I want the whimsy. Give me whimsy, darn it. And and basically, here's the stupid how dumb I was as a kid. It's like I didn't put together that. Oh, wait a minute. When I get to the end of Dragon Ball, we aged Goku up. Therefore, we play into the start of Dragon Ball Z. Never put it together. So then, of course, after okay, it literally bleeds into the same show. It's the sequel to Dragon Ball, and of course, I get into that very reluctant and say, "Oh my god, Dragon Ball Z is awesome!" And of course, you get the GT, and it's like, okay, Dragon Ball GT. That's the
Dragon Ball's
stupidest.
not awesome.
Literally, someone told me like, "Oh, so Emperor Pilaf wishes that Goku was a king." And that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I'm never gonna watch that. And of course, eventually, like, oh yeah, it's kind of where Dragon Ball Z ends, and this is a sequel to that. Like, why did I fall for it again? So watched it, and so I thought I was done when I got to the end of GT. I really did. And apparently, Dragon Ball Super has been the new fad that's been taken over. My friend's been talking up to me yet again. Tiki, I never learn. Apparently, it's like I'm told, and I've seen clips of it. Like, okay, look, the animation's a little polished. We're kind of taking out kind of the old charm of Dragon Ball. You know what? I don't think I'm going to be like the hair's turning blue these days. I don't know. And then basically I started with this, and then I am now hooked, and I'm almost caught up with Dragon Ball Super now. I swear to God, it's so I just feel so repetitive with Dragon Ball in the sense of I just keep falling for the
Here's
same.
the weird thing about Dragon Ball Super, Dragon. Correct me if I'm wrong about this, by all means, but isn't Dragon Ball Super basically an adaptation of the movies that come out?
No, here's the fascinating thing, Tiki. Okay, so
Okay.
Dragon Ball Z, they're based on the manga, which basically is adapted to the anime, right?
Yeah.
Dragon Ball GT did not have the original author, who I believe is pretty sure is still around. The original author, Toriyama, he did not have any involvement with GT. They brought back the voice actors and everything, of course, in the series, but they never got the okay. So essentially, that means all of GT was never canonized. That and the movies essentially are not in canon. They're just kind of fun. They're candy bars for the brain, if you will. And Dragon Ball Super has gotten the Dragon Ball Super got the okay from the creator. Again, I want to say Super adapts a manga as well, that like new manga though. I want to say. The point being, it got whether it got the okay or heavily. The point is, Toriyama is heavily involved in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's adapting a book or after the fact they're adapting a book, I'm not sure. Regardless, like this is the stuff that actually counts, and basically the idea is it works into the ending of Dragon Ball Z. It's like everything in between the very last, the ending of Dragon Ball Z.
Right, but what I'm saying is, isn't season 1 of Super an adaptation of Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods?
Oh, right. I'm sorry, I misheard you. See, that's the thing. Here's the weird thing. So they did these movies like Battle of Gods, and they did like F for basically the destruction of F for basically
the Frieza saga, whatever it's called.
the Frieza saga. So basically, here's the thing.
Resurrection F, I think.
You're kind of right in that they did these movies, and then basically they are adapted into the series. They did them again in the series, so I guess in essence they did kind of readapt.
I gotta tell you, that's why I never got into the series, is because it felt redundant to watch like an elongated version of the movie.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. Here's the thing: I didn't watch those movies because I just watched the series. But I started.
I really enjoyed Battle of Gods.
Sure, and basically they do that story again in the that's the start of the series, Battle of Gods. Like we introduced
Vegeta is enjoyable in the Super version.
He's very yes.
I love Vegeta in the movie.
That's what I'm saying, Tiki.
He's just like running around, just trying to please Lord Beerus.
That is 100% in this, cool. Of course, it's dubbed because that was the thing. That's the thing that scared me off of Battle Gods, because originally it wasn't dubbed in the English, and it's like, oh man, all this time and it's not even dubbed. And now they've dubbed it, I'm sure. But point being, it
was dubbed back in the day when I saw it.
I'm sure it was. That's what I'm saying. I don't know originally. The point being, it was like, and you know what they're doing coming out all this time, and they're not going to make that the first one. But again, I'm a really stubborn, stupid Dragon Ball fan. That's on me. Okay, you're not in the role. What I'm saying is, so Dragon Ball Z Broly, which I'm familiar with. I watched all the other Dragon Ball Z movies, which apparently never counted at the end of the day, but I watched all those
No, they
movies.
did it, yeah.
And one of these, they basically it's like a big unstoppable threat comes by, we beat him up. That's essentially that's the plot of every Dragon Ball movie. I hate to tell you, spoiler alert. And of course, the one that stands out the most is the Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan, the most hulked out Super Saiyan you've ever seen in your life. And essentially, that's the sell of that movie. So here they
like Super Saiyan on steroids is Broly.
Absolutely, and basically they readapted it again with Toriyama's involvement here. He never was behind it. I don't know if he was behind any of those movies, but he wasn't involved in the movies as well. So points Broly was like there, but he never really did anything with it. So now this is Toriyama's take on Broly. So it's basically it readapts that story, but in continuity, and it's basically it does it in basically it all counts now, and basically it gives Broly an actual character instead of like the guy. Because I don't know if you remember Broly's original motivation was that as a baby.
No, I do not.
Tiki is the most ridiculous thing you've ever.
I'm sure it is.
Listen, it's very simple. As a baby, Broly was sitting next to Goku. Remember, all the Saiyan babies are sent out to planets all across the world, and that's how Goku lands up on Earth. And basically, he was next to him before they were sent out into their respective planets. And Goku cried all the time. Broly can never get any sleep. So years later,
that's perfect. That's
years
excellent.
later he remembered Goku,
that.
and he kept saying his name like Kakarot. And that Broly was
that's so Dragon Ball. That's awesome.
So again, that was the original story. So now they made it less stupid. Essentially, now it's more as an actual character.
That honestly kind of reminds me of how stupid the Emperor Pilaf thing is.
That's what I'm saying. Also in Dragon Ball, I'm jumping all over the place here. To keep it simple, so basically they gave him an actual character. There's, I think this is for me being the first time. This is my first real introduction to Dragon Ball Super with this movie in that story, and I had a good time with it. I think it's a good introduction for first timers to Dragon Ball Super. And I had all the hallmarks of what I liked about the series, and then basically, again, it kind of got me to, what, I like this movie. Again, yes, it's kind of the same idea of like the unstoppable. It's still, at the end of the day, it's kind of the unstoppable bad guy you're trying to beat. But again, you liked Broly. That's the difference. You understood where Broly's come from, and he was just kind of manipulated into the situation. It was like, there was a lot more tact to the story. And basically, the only nitpick I really had was that, the prologue goes on way too long. We do all the Broly story at the first half. Like, I want Goku and Vegeta, man. Where are they?
Right.
Where it's like, look, this is all fine. It's a fine story, but like, man,
that would be problematic.
It's like, if you haven't seen Dragon Ball in a while, it's like, well, man, I mean, I'm going into this. I mean, it's a lot of Broly. The Broly story keeps going. It's like 40 minutes, practically 30 to 40 minutes.
Really?
Okay, no, maybe. Okay, I maybe it's not 30. It feels like 30 to 40 minutes, but it's not.
I would have seen that in theaters. I honestly would have been frustrated, Dragon.
It feels long. I don't know how long.
I very nearly saw this one in theaters. I still have to catch up with it.
I think I'm exaggerating the time, but it feels like a long time. But again, it's a good story, though. I'm not complaining.
40 minutes, it's like what, like an hour and change?
Yes, 40 minutes is wrong, but it feels like maybe it's 10 minutes, and I think that just kind of takes up with the shorter runtime. That kind of takes up comparatively, regardless.
Fair enough.
Being, I watched this, and it kind of reinvigorated me, and I rewatched Dragon. I watched through Dragon Ball Super and binged it. I'm still binging it to be caught up. It's still new. It's still going. And I gotta tell you, it's such a fun ride, man. There were some moments that made me emotional, some moments that made me laugh at, like all that Vegeta stuff that you saw in the movie.
I should check it out.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, man. It really is. And Vegeta is just, he's perfect, man. They do a lot of great stuff with him.
I am a definite Vegeta stan, so what can I say?
Regardless, I'd recommend Broly, especially if you're really nostalgic for Dragon Ball. Don't expect the moon, but expect a good time.
All right. Okay, next up, Dragon, we'll do another one of yours to catch up.
All right, The Front Runner.
Yeah, what's this one about, Dragon? It sounds familiar. I feel like you've probably told me about this one before.
That I have. So The Front Runner is my daily dose of Farmiga.
Ah, okay.
Anyway, so this was Jason Reitman, of course, is going to be directing the new Ghostbusters movie. Jason Reitman did a movie, and I was just since that movie was announced, I looked into Jason Reitman stuff, and I found this. So this came out in 2018. This is
Huh.
this is a biopic on Gary Hart. Now, Gary Hart, it's kind of a, I think for our generation, kind of an obscure subject. But Gary Hart was essentially, he was the Democratic nominee. I don't want to bore you with all the politics, so I'm just going to keep it simple. So essentially, he was the Democratic nominee during the 1988 elections. Basically, the election that gave us George, George Bush Sr. That one.
Uh-huh.
So essentially, the idea is this guy. They were figuring out which Democrat would run against, and it ended up being God. I'm blanking on the Dukakis. Ended up being Dukakis. Basically, because of if he won, he would have been there instead of Dukakis. I want to say is the way the history would have went if things didn't go belly up for Gary Hart. So that's essentially what the story is. So Hugh Jackman plays Gary Hart. He's really good.
Oh, nice.
And Vera Farmiga plays his wife. She plays Mrs. Hart. So the idea is essentially is that this is a story about Gary Hart was a politician. He was like he was a legit honest politician. He was running. He was saying good things. He was a legit candidate. It's like, hey, this guy's essentially he was a contender, and everyone was like, man, this guy might actually be president. He was really good and really kind of like, he looked good. He had a nice family. Perhaps he kind of he cared about the issues for all as far as we could tell. And basically, he challenged the press to like, hey, guys, if you tail me, you try to dig up dirt, it could be a boring day. And essentially that's what spells out his doom. Where basically he challenged the press in the 80s, the pre-internet age. And that's kind of what this movie's about at the end of the day. It's kind of it's kind of about the early beginnings of the internet. Before, again, it's like 88, so it's like circling that 90s period where we start to get the internet. It's kind of like the paparazzi, in between the paparazzi and the internet. It's kind of what this movie is. The information age, if you will, like the anti-privacy age is in its beginnings here, where he challenges the press and they dig in and they kind of find out about this affair that he's having, and basically we kind of see the ruining of a man's life, essentially.
Ooh.
And that's the thing. It's and that's pretty much what the movie is. We have some other great cast members, like J.K. Simmons is in the movie. He plays the campaign manager. Alfred Molina, 2 Spider-Man characters for the price of 1. He's in it. Even Mike Judge, if you can believe it. Mike Judge, Hank Hill himself is in this movie.
Oh, man.
Anyway, so star-studded cast aside here, at least quality star-studded cast aside. The problem with the movie is, I mean, it's interesting. It warrants intrigue, I'm sure, but it's a little unfocused in places, and I think it really hurts the pace. And the movie could be paced a lot better. Core of the story is pretty good though, and I think the biggest mistake the movie makes story wise that we avoid Gary as a real character. Is that Gary is there, and Gary. Sorry, let me rephrase that. We're focused more on the campaign than we are Gary Hart. I think that's a problem. Where Gary Hart's an interesting character. I want to know more about this guy and more about like his relationship with his wife and everything, why things are kind of rocky, why he's doing these things, and we're more about Gary Hart is a character, and then he does something, and then we're damage control for the movie. And that's pretty much where it is. And then we have a scene with him at the end, and that's kind of it. Could have been better, but it's definitely it's kind of it's an intriguing sell. I'll give you that.
Okay, fair enough.
All right.
All right, next up, we have Screwball.
Tell me, man, I'm all ears. Screwball, how is it?
So you haven't seen it?
I've been tempted to, but then I found out you were doing it, so I just figured I'd wait and see what your recommendation was for it.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. Do you know the big gimmick behind it?
Well, it's Screwball is about steroids in baseball, right? And the guy's
Yes,
like,
but do you know the big gimmick of how they shoot it?
No, what is the gimmick?
Oh, this is going to intrigue you then. All right. It's all recreations. But it's all done with little kids playing the roles of the adults, and all the dialogue is dubbed over with the interviews.
Are you serious?
And yeah, I'm serious. And basically that conveys that everyone in the story is acting like children.
Wow.
It's striking. It's super entertaining.
Interesting, man. I'm so.
This is definitely a movie where it's like, I think it's a little bit of style over substance, but there is a compelling story in there, and honestly, I don't necessarily think the gimmick is as compelling as you might think it is. It kind of like your brain just kind of gets used to it after a while. But it's a compelling story. It's there's definitely a lot of twists and turns along the way to keep you interested and invested in the plot for sure. it's not the best documentary of the year or anything. I don't think it's as good as like, the Firefest documentaries, and certainly not as good as the Amazing Jonathan documentary. But it's up there. It's pretty solid. It's like I said, I think probably it's a little bit of a one-trick pony with the recreations. It's like the recreations sound like a really cool device, but they don't really do anything all that creative with it beyond just the basic premise of the recreation. So like I said, there is a little bit of a one-trick pony quality with it. But other than that, it's a pretty solid watch. It's a fun watch. I would recommend it, Dragon.
Okay.
For all I know, you might like it more than I do.
All right.
All right, next up is a movie that I personally didn't really care for all that much, but we'll see how you like it. Clint Eastwood's The Mule.
I remember being really intrigued by the trailer of this last year, and I was kind of hoping...
I feel like the trailer was very deceptive, honestly. Tell me if you feel the same way.
Given what the movie turns out to be, yes, it is very deceptive. And I was afraid, again, my fear was that it was really big and spoilery, where it was not that at all. And I got to tell you, so The Mule...
I mean, my problem is that the trailer at least advertised that there'd be some suspense in this movie, and there was no suspense in this movie at all.
I mean, at times there's suspense, to be fair. I mean,
barely.
I'll give it a look. The Mule. I think this is an underrated, pleasant movie. I really love this movie.
You love it? All right, fair enough.
It was not the greatest in the Clint Eastwood movie, but I really liked it.
Oh God, no! It's not the greatest Clint Eastwood movie.
As I'm saying, like it was kind. Let me put it this way: it was, and look, I'm not just saying it's like the best comparison I can forge for this. It's kind of like you take. It's a lousy comparison, mind you. It's like you kind of take a movie that to me is pleasant throughout, like an Intern, if you will. You take like The Intern, and it meets like the Albuquerque verse. We have like, okay, so basically it's a pleasant version of a drug smuggler. Essentially, it's the pleasant version of a drug mule. It's like one of those. To me, this is like a pleasant, almost like a pleasant feel good sort of thing. Like, oh my God, look at this. It's just Clint Eastwood, as doing this biopic on a senior citizen who becomes a smuggler, and it basically becomes loved by all, and even his pursuers.
That's my problem. Because he's loved by everybody, there's no suspense. There's absolutely no suspense in any of it, and he gets a totally happy ending, all things considered.
All things considered, but I don't know. There's something just really, I don't know. There's something nice about it. It's just these. At the end of the day, it's just I get it. A lot of people, and you're not the only one. Everyone I've kind of shown this, or people have happened to see it. People have seen it, or like, I didn't care for it. I was like, I'm probably the only one who likes this movie, but I don't know. I just really, sometimes it just doesn't take much. He was a guy. He did all this stuff. And again, he was somewhat, again, it's based on a true story, so I don't know how many liberties were necessarily taken here, but presumably it's all in the money. And Clint Eastwood's done biopics before, and he's done really good biopics before.
Okay.
It's like I think some people, some people can appreciate a quiet movie. It's just it's kind of a quiet, pleasant movie where well, he's involved in some dangerous waters, but things work out for him. It's not a bad thing. It's like for a change, things work out. We've seen things go belly up and sideways also all the time elsewhere, and it's just kind of realistic. Well, yeah, if you were really good at your job and unsuspecting, you would get rewarded in this line of work. You would. Things might work out for you. Again, if you played things smart. We see things go wrong all the time. It's a refreshing change of pace, I suppose. I don't know.
All right. Okay, next up on my end is another Netflix documentary that happens to be about something baseball related, but not directly about the sport itself. What a coincidence. We have the Jack of all trades. Have you seen this one?
I've seen the Bruce Campbell series. I've not seen this one, though.
Okay, this one is definitely, it's got less of a flashy gimmick than Screwball does, but this is definitely the better of the two, for sure. Basically, this movie follows the son of the guy who popularized baseball cards in the 1980s. So essentially, baseball cards have always been around. Of course, we see like the old school, the gum packs, if you will. The ones with the really hard gum.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in the 1980s, baseball cards kind of, through the 90s, baseball cards kind of had like a big resurgence in the market. And essentially, this guy's father was responsible for it, because he kind of like went from convention to convention and kind of like got the hype up. So essentially, Dragon, what this movie explores is this movie kind of explores the dark side of collecting, which is, kind of the whole idea where everyone thought that baseball cards were going to be worth like thousands of dollars and they were going to be like this huge investment. And at the end of the day, they're just like their paper, for the most part. It's
Basically,
like,
it's like the comic stock market crash.
yeah, exactly. That's why I think you would really relate to this.
Oh yeah.
And so essentially, this movie is a quest to find out the truth about his father, because his father also mysteriously abandoned him as a child. And so his father is like kind of like this big guru of the trading card industry, and everyone in the industry knows and respects him. And so essentially, the whole movie is the filmmaker and his sister going around, getting stories of people who knew their father, and kind of uncovering some dark, seedy undertones to the collecting industry in the process. I'm not going to tell you what those undertones are, but suffice to say, it's a very fun, kind of like twisty and turny documentary. Not the same level of like mind blowing Russian doll-esque twists as The Amazing Jonathan, but still some fun twists along the way as we get to the heart of it all. And so Dragon, this just definitely lives up to kind of like an intrigue of a niche genre of collecting, and I very much recommend it. It's both an intriguing look into the genre of collecting, and also a really interesting tale of a son reconciling with his father. So the two subjects kind of like dovetail nicely into each other.
Well, I for one am sold, and I'm sure Daniel Wormald would love this movie.
All right, check it out.
Little price reference from Better Call Saul there for the kids.
Next up.
Always amazing. So keep it simple. So you can find this very easily on YouTube, by the way, folks. Always amazing is this. Okay, so this to me is as I sold this to Tiki, which I don't blame me. I didn't have quite the chance to check this out. But let me put it this way, Tiki. This is a companion piece to the Amazing Jonathan documentary. Tiki, this is the other documentary.
Okay.
Like the second crew, the big shot crew. This is
Yeah,
their
yeah.
documentary.
Right.
This is the one at the thing later in the movie. Where basically we infiltrate the thing later. This is what they were showing. So this is the Bravo documentary. This is basically the more straightforward, heartfelt documentary about the Amazing Jonathan. All the same, it's pretty much again like the way Chaplin's like the straightforward biopic. This is the straightforward documentary, and I don't mean that in the sense of I don't mean it's boring or anything. Because again, the Amazing Jonathan is an interesting guy, and just kind of tell this focuses more on what Act One of the Amazing Jonathan documentary was. Okay, we learn about the guy, and this covers the sickness and the fact that he's still around, he's still doing stuff. So it basically this kind of covers the wide gamut, and also like essentially his protege, is kind of his Jason Mewes, if you will, just kind of the young man that he found, just kind of took in, and he's just kind of like he's friends with, he's buddies with. I think maybe they'll get a brief appearance in the other documentary here and there. So it's basically kind of about it's the magician who inspired all like the Chris Mind freaks of the world, and then works with the Penn and Tellers of the world, that sort of thing. They interview them, and they kind of talk about him and everything, and kind of the love they have for the guys. It's all it's pretty much about that. And then the interesting thing I think I should tell you about Tiki, and you're going to appreciate this having seen the other one, is that the crew on this they have major issues with the Amazing Jonathan documentary.
Oh God.
There's a lot of bad blood between them, apparently.
Really.
So here's the thing. So they're accusing Ben Berman, the guy who did the Amazing Jonathan documentary. Basically, it's a documentary on all the other documentaries being made.
Right.
They say because basically our second crew here, again, they factor in prominently, and basically they're blurred out, mind you. And they say we didn't want to be filmed at all, and he didn't listen to our requests. And I would argue that he did, because he blurred you out. Therefore, you're not in the documentary, but you are part of the story. So Point being, they're saying that he was very dishonest and portrayed the crew of Always Amazing as the bad guys. And look, at the end of the day, the crew of Always Amazing. I understand the truth sometimes lies in between. I get that, right? You know sometimes the truth, there's a little bit of both on both sides. However, any way you slice it, the Always Amazing crew, as at least this again, I'll admit I don't know, I don't have all the answers. A big part of the Amazing Jonathan documentary is the fact that these guys were the all important crew who touted off the fact that we did we worked on Man on a Wire and Man on the Wire and Search for Sugar Man. We did that, and that was that's a huge deal. And again, we know that really stuck with whether they claim that they took that back immediately. They set the record straight. Whether you set the record straight or not, apparently Jonathan didn't get it. He didn't get it. You didn't do a good enough job explaining that to him. So I don't care any way you slice it. You were a little deceptive, my friends. So ipso facto, you're kind of the bad guy in that movie for a solid reason. I don't know. Point being, 2 solid documentaries on that front. Moving on.
All right. So next haven't been a Netflix show around this subject matter because it just to me might be the ultimate criminal injustice that our justice system has ever depicted. Dragon, honestly, it's sickening.
Tiki, you're right about that, but I want to make it absolutely clear. Okay, this legit injustice. Okay, but again, making a murder also injustice. But again, that one has more like hearts and minds divided. But seriously though, that's again, if you can't make it through that, you can definitely make it through making a murder. Just saying for just 2 cents, throwing it out.
Well, I definitely can't make it through that. So
yeah, you can't make it through the "they see us" thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Even with the most angelic and hopeful of all things. In the
no, I can't. I'm sorry.
That's fair. Look, fair enough. But again, making a murder, food for thought. Anyways, our getting back into the Central Park Five. Central Park Five. This is a Ken Burns documentary. Ken Burns, one of the most famed documentarians of our time. I think this guy did all the Civil War documentaries, all the war documentaries. That guy.
Mm-hmm.
Ken Burns, he did a documentary on essentially, for those who may not be aware of the story, as my associate here, is just kind of like basically kind of all the gloom and doom over the Netflix adaptation. I believe Ava DuVernay.
Ava DuVernay.
Now we're just getting silly. But yes, her. She's doing that series, and from what I understand, I hear it's well again. I got to watch it for myself, especially after this. I definitely got to watch it now. So basically, 5 black teens during a very crime-ridden era of New York, where basically you could basically when you would walk through Central Park, there'd be a lot of crime waiting for you. Being the idea is very during that sensitive time in the '80s for New York. And basically, these 5 black teens are framed for raping a woman in Central Park, and it's horrible. It really is. And basically, they basically we know for a fact that they didn't do this. We know. And basically, it's again it's during a sensitive time in New York, and basically this whole system's out to get them. It's just the point is like these 5 guys, they have no hope. It's truly heartbreaking. Let me put it this way: justice ends up coming from just to show you how screwed up this movie is. I mean, to show up this true event is justice didn't come from the system; it came from the criminal.
Yeah, right.
The guy who committed the crime had to help them.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like plea deal. I mean he had to help them. It's sad as all get out, but again, compelling documentary work. Not that look, it's not reinventing the wheel, but it's a good story, and Ken Burns knows his stuff. But again, it's more like, hey, Ken
Burns is kind of like an old school documentary filmmaker. So yeah, none of his stuff is really reinvent the wheel. That's not really his style.
Like Ken Burns, in a perfect world, Ken Burns are the documentaries that we would show in school in lieu of books in the future. That's kind of what we would do. Anyway, okay.
All right, 3 more left, folks. We're almost to the end of this.
I think we mean 4 more. There's Tarantino.
Oh, right, I missed that one. Okay. Do you want to get to that one next?
Well, I was hoping to.
Okay, hold on. Let me type it up. All right. Okay, go ahead.
The Hateful Eight, a movie that you've seen.
Yeah, probably at the bottom of my Tarantino rankings with Death Proof, if I'm being honest.
Really? Well, you mean Death Proof's better than Hateful Eight to you?
No. I mean, this is. I don't even consider Death Proof a real Tarantino movie, and this might be the worst real Tarantino movie, if that makes sense.
Well, look. Let me put it this way: it's not my favorite either, but I didn't mind it. I thought it was. I think it's. I like. It's kind of an
I don't mind it
unusual.
either, and I think it's very good. I mean, Tarantino, it's like he's one of those filmmakers where he hasn't made a bad movie. I just think that this movie is like, I don't really get why he shot it the way he shot it, considering it all takes place in a cabin. Like, I don't get why we made such a big push for the 70 millimeter thing.
Yeah, it's very unusual Tarantino film to say the least. It's like I think the best part of the movie is Jackson, Samuel L. Jackson, and Kurt Russell. I think they really make the movie. I think they're the best parts of the movie. I love. Let me put this: the true blue Tarantino stuff feels like when we're making our way to the cabin. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Totally.
I don't know. Basically, here's what we have that really kind of earmarks like
It's
kind
just
of
the
like.
cabin itself. It takes up way too much time. That's the problem.
Here's the thing. I like half of. I like some of the cabin stuff, but yes, basically, I like. We do our classic stuff with Tarantino where we segment the story, which is good. We have like again our interplay and our dialogue with characters, and again, it plays at its best when we're on our way to the cabinet. So you have like all these logistics, like okay, well, again, we can't trust anyone. Therefore, so you have to put your gun on the rock and prove your identification, all that sort of stuff. That's great. And we have like the Lincoln letter, which is a great device in the movie.
I like the Lincoln letter. That's probably one of the stronger pieces of the screenplay.
You definitely got some gnarly violence in this movie. You got some racism. You got again appropriate for the time, mind you. Again.
Yeah, I like how you're selling that. Like, yeah, you got some racism.
Again, I don't mean like yay racism. I mean, just, yeah.
No, I know what you're talking about. It's kind of honestly, it's kind of like subverting racism is kind of like a style of Tarantino these days.
Yep. And again, as I mentioned, you have the narrative kind of like segment of the story and everything. Suppose you have like the hallmarks of Tarantino are there, and those are probably some of the better parts of the movie. And I feel, basically, it feels like we drag certain parts out when we're at the cabin, like specifically.
Oh yeah, that's an understatement.
Like I like it when the mystery gets cooking, but building up to it's like, oh man, we're just taking forever getting somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
This. And now they've made an even long. They made an even longer version of this on Netflix.
I don't even get that at all.
They did like a mini
why?
series on Netflix, so they basically made it longer and as like what is it? I think it's 4 episodes, like 4 hours or something. Like I don't know.
Why?
Beats the heck out of me. I only watched I watched the movie version. I didn't watch the series version. I would say.
Uh-huh.
Regardless. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe it's not 4 hours, but they did like. I think it baffles me. They just did like a series and stuff. They split up weirdly. I don't know.
That's so weird. Yeah.
Not 4 hours, but longer. Which why I don't get it. Regardless, like I don't know. Maybe let me put it this way. There were really weird parts in this movie too. Like like I don't know if it's just me, but I think they went a little far with the when basically a Major Marquess, basically when Samuel L. Jackson's character is goading Bruce Dern's character with the whole like all the details about his son's death and everything, and you know what I'm talking about. You basically goading him into a gunfight about his son. A little dark for my taste, a little like what he did to his son. It's really twisted. Like, oh god, that's weird. Even for Tarantino stands, like not even a foot related thing. It's like this is.
I mean, I will say that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was a big comeback for Tarantino after this, I think.
True. So yeah, again, the murder mystery is kind of neat, but getting to that point's a little long. And Goggins is really cool as well. So that's pretty much. Hateful Eight's solid enough, but not the best.
All right. Okay, Dragon. Please, we have to wrap this up. So
don't worry, gonna go by quick.
Okay.
All right, Dying Laughing. To keep it simple, I just kind of happened on this one. I was sold from a clip, and basically what it's about is it's about comedians taking the stage. It's kind of comedians as really good storytellers because I don't think they use a lick of footage in this. Honestly, they barely use any footage. It's basically them just kind of sitting in black and white, sitting in front of a camera, and just kind of interview and basically telling you stories. Really good storytelling. Basically, the best parts of it it's about the ups and downs of being a stand-up comedian. Basically, the best parts of it when they're talking about hecklers and bombing on stage. Those are kind of the best parts. We have like all the comedians, like Jerry Seinfeld's in it, Kevin Hart's in it. To kind of talk about the hook of being on stage. That sort of stuff. It's it's solid enough. I think if you're interested in the stand-up comedy, especially you, Mr. Dave Chappelle, I think you get a kick out of this.
Okay, cool.
All right, next.
Next, 1 second. Okay.
This was really good. I highly recommend this to you. I believe it's on Amazon by Sidney Lumet. So Sidney Lumet is one of Spielberg's idols. I'm talking about. Let me be specific. Spielberg's idols like David Lean, but this guy is like cut from the same cloth as like a David Lean. David Lean's like the big sweeping shots director. Sidney Lumet's he's the New York director, man. This I buy this like Scorsese's guy. I doubt I don't know if he is, for all I know. The point being,
you get an icon, and you get an icon.
But you know what I mean. The fact, like, these are like kind of the old school directors, like, where Hitchcock is like kind of the director, of course, very well known for the '60s. But like, basically, your directors of the '50s and '60s. That's Sidney Lumet and Alfred Hitchcock. Those are your guys, and David Lean along in there. These like the icon, but this is before the Spielberg era of directing,
Yeah, sure.
Basically, Sidney Lumet, he passed away years ago, and this is like they had an archival recording where they sat down with him, they refurbished it, and they made a documentary out of it. And this is like the last footage they had of him. They basically put this out in 2015, and it's basically him as a marvelous storyteller, and basically Sidney Lumet, for those who may not be aware, and basically the kind of molded in the one. Here's what the documentary covers, like the making of 12 Angry Men. He reflects on his work. 12 Angry Men, of course, that's the one that made his career. Serpico, and Dog Day After. Oh man, Dog Day Afternoon is a great one. Dog Day Afternoon, Network, one of Jimmy McGill's favorite movies. The Verdict, another lawyer-based one. And basically, the running theme is that he's a very moral director. He's very much about kind of like the morality in his works. It's very much about what are we saying about ourselves morally, as well as kind of setting a lot of things in New York. That's kind of what the piece is about overall. It's a really great insight on filmmaking, on like where a director bleeds into his work. It's really good stuff. I think you get a kick out of it.
Cool.
All right.
Next up,
lastly, Pleasantville.
I know my sister really likes this movie. I've always meant to watch it, but for some reason I've just never gotten around to this.
This movie is absolutely up your alley, my friend.
I'm sure it is. I mean, with the reality TV angle and everything.
Here's the thing. So Gary Walsh directed and wrote this. Now, Gary Walsh may be a familiar name because he wrote Big. He wrote Big, and I'm sorry, sorry. I'm sorry. Forgive me, folks. I feel so stupid because I wanted to specifically avoid this, but I did it. I wrote it down anyway, and I don't know why. It's Gary Ross, not Gary Walsh. Gary Walsh is from Veep. He's Tony. He's Tony Hale's character from Veep. I kept. Stupid. So Gary Ross.
That's what happens when we run a podcast for 3 hours, Dragon.
Okay, so Gary Ross, he wrote Big, and he also wrote one of my other favorite movies, Dave, the Kevin Kline movie. That's the political movie I want more of. He just plays a really awesome president, Dave. Anywho, so point being, really good writer. He wrote and directed this, and basically it's a movie that stars Tobey Maguire and Reese Witherspoon. Where basically the two of them are kind of like essentially they're late '90s teens, a little punky in the case of Reese Witherspoon. They're '90s teens, man. And the idea is there's this very Leave It to Beaver-esque show that has that Tobey Maguire's obsessed with, and essentially he watches this show, and a curious TV repairman enters, played by Don Knotts, and he fixes the remote and gives them a remote that basically push a button.
No, what?
Essentially, their brother and sister fighting over a remote because she has a date coming over and he wants to watch a marathon of his favorite show, Pleasantville. And basically, Don Knotts comes in and gives them a remote that zaps him into the TV. And basically, they're in the '50s show. It's all in black and white, glorious. Oh, so I'm drooling over the black and white, man. It looks so good. And basically, it's kind of the dark side of the '50s. That's kind of what the movie's about. It's kind of the dark side of the '50s and reevaluating nostalgia as. Basically, it's like we reevaluate the nostalgia we had for the '50s with all the progress that we have. Well, '90s then, now, what I mean. Point is, like, we look at the progress that we've had since the '50s. And with our two modern characters, we reapply it to like, yeah, why can't we improve the 50s if we're here? That's kind of the idea of the movie. It's an ingenious idea. I don't know if I'm doing it justice, but I'd recommend it. There's a lot of really great heady ideas. It's like, well, yeah, if you were in this fictional TV universe where it plays with the tropes of 50s TV and like the old days of TV, it's a lot of fun. It's got a great supporting cast. Again, as I mentioned with Don Knotts, you have Jeff Daniels. I love when Jeff Daniels pops up in things, by the way. He's a real solid actor. Jeff Daniels, many times, is underrated. Like, some people write him off as, oh, it's the guy from Dumb and Dumber. Like, he's much more than that, guys. He's a really good actor. Anywho, Pleasantville, I think you kick it at, and I enjoyed it a great deal. I'm not in love with the ending. The ending, what happens at the ending is fine. Just feels a little abrupt, is all. So yeah, I like Pleasantville's good.
Okay. So, Dragon, I guess.
So let me say this to keep it brief. Why don't we do this to keep it brief?
Okay.
Let's just focus on the big stuff coming out in September.
Okay. So obviously there's It, and then there's Judy. Is there anything else?
Steven Universe, the movie.
Oh, right. I don't really consider TV stuff, but.
So we have three major. Basically, those are the closest things. The three major things we have coming out there. So it on TV.
Judy looks really good, though, does it not?
It does. Judy looks. Renee Zellweger playing Judy. It looks really good.
Sorry, we have Ad Estrada as well. That's another major one.
Oh, okay. Regardless, it's I'm really sold on Judy. I'm hoping to see it. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna have to wait on that one. If I can help it, I will see it for September. Because one, it's the only thing out really in September. But
right,
apparently 21 Bridges is in October, not September, so I can't see that. Regardless, of course, Steven Universe the movie. I'm hearing good. It's being built up really well. I'm pulling for it, man. I'm not sure about this older Steven, but we'll see.
We'll see. All right, and just really quick, best and worst, Dragon.
Absolutely. Okay, best thing for me in regards to the August stuff was, again, Madness and the Method. That was no contest. That was the best. Whereas the ketchup, I'm sorry, the worst thing. The worst thing was probably, again, man, I had good stuff. Worst, Other was probably the worst thing, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, best catch. I'm sorry, you want to go for your stuff, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead for your catch up. Go ahead.
Okay, catch up. I guess the best thing was probably. I mean, look, I really like the mule. If I'm being honest, though, I mean, the Broly thing was probably the best thing. If I'm being frank, though, I don't know. It's probably Broly, but for me personally, it's the mule. I like the mule. I'm going to say it's the mule is the best thing. All right.
All right. For me, it's going to be pretty easy. For the theatrical stuff, the best is definitely Peanut Butter Falcon. And the worst is pretty easily Good Boys. And like I said, Drake, Good Boys isn't even bad. It's just pretty mediocre. Mediocre. I'm sorry. What? How does it go?
Mediocre.
Mediocre. Right. And then in terms of catch-up, Dragon, let's see. I would say.
Tiki, you might want to get rid of the banner now.
Oh, yes, right. Thank you. In terms of catch-up, definitely the best is King of Comedy. Easily King of Comedy. And the worst, it's not bad, but it's just kind of, like I said, it relies on kind of like a one-trick pony gimmick, and that's Screwball. Like I said, it's not bad. It's pretty fun stuff, but it's just kind of like, all right, we get it. They're kids. They're acting like kids. All right.
I didn't really have any worse catch-up. The closest thing would probably be, I mean, the front runner was not as good as I hoped it was going to be, so I think, unfortunately, the front runner has to face the chopping block.
Which is? Oh, the front runner, right. Yeah. I'm sorry, when you said the front runner, I thought you meant like, the front runner, if I had to pick something. I'm sorry,
not that front was runner. Dumb. The actual movie called The Front Runner, my friend.
Right, I'm sorry. 3 hours and 17 minutes in. All right, well... but hopefully September will be as. I mean, I got to admit, Dragon. Dragon, can you copy and paste the outro really quick?
Sure.
I got to admit, folks, I thought that August would be a train wreck, and it turned out to actually be surprisingly good. Not quite as good as July, but pretty solid. And I don't have the same hopes for September, but you never know. You never know. We'll see. I mean, I will say one thing with August. I Peanut Butter Falcon definitely wasn't on my radar at all going into the month, and so I can imagine that maybe a similar situation is going to pop up with a movie that I might not even know about yet, just like I didn't know about Peanut Butter Falcon. So we'll see. All right. Well, folks, we've waxed on long enough. It's time to put the pen down. Until next time, when we return for another fitting chapter in our
Movie Memoirs!
movie memoirs.